Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is a Scarborough Town Council workshop. Today is August 20th, 2025, and the topic of our workshop this evening is the Vulnerability Assessment Review. Let the record show that present are Councillor Kane, myself, Councillor Fellows, and Councillor Donovan. Joining us this evening are members of the Vulnerability Assessment Committee. And so I will give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then I will turn it over to Jamie Fitch to get us started. Go ahead, Pete.
Good evening, Council. Hi, everyone. Peter Slavinsky with the Maine Geological Survey and also a resident of the town.
Lucy Lacase, a resident of the town since 1981, and also sort of representing the Prouts Neck community, of which I've been a part for all my life. So both camps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jamie.
All right, Jamie Fitch, Sustainability Manager.
Leela Pike with GEI Consultants. We were the hired consultants for this work.
Angela Blanchett, the town engineer.
Cressy Maurer, Conservation Committee.
Yeah.
And Shannon Senate, President.
Chance, do you want to come sit up? Yeah, other members of the Vulnerability Assessment Group, if you're here, please feel free to join us.
I'm Deb Perkins Smith and I'm at 29 Greenwood Ave, which is at Higgins Beach.
I'm also with Higgins Beach, Marianne.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. With that, I will turn it over to Jamie.
Thank you. So as you mentioned, we're here tonight to talk about the Coastal Flood Vulnerability Assessment, which was part of the fiscal year 23 budget. The assessment is intended as a first step for the town to identify current and future risks to our infrastructure and neighborhoods from sea level rise and storm surge. And it'll help us prioritize adaptations or improvements to help our areas and infrastructure become more resilient to flooding. As Leela mentioned, Leela Pike here, sitting to my right, we hired GEI consultants to assist with the assessment, which began spring of 2024. And in a moment, I'll turn things over to Leela, who will walk us through the process and the results. I'll warn you, it's complex. So there's a lot of information to go over tonight, and we are not going too deep with it because there is a lot to digest. You've heard from some members of the Vulnerability Assessment Working Group. I just want to recognize everyone who contributed in this process, including town staff, Angela Blanchett from Engineering, Autumn Spear from Planning, Doug Howard and Brett Frank from Public Works, Chief Kinlan from Public Safety, Nicole Hall from Community Services, and Karen Martin from SEDCO. Representatives of our boards, committees, and community organizations, including Councillor Seither, Pete Slavinsky from Conservation Commission, Robin Saunders from the Long Range Planning Committee, Portia Hirschman from the Transportation Committee, Nick Rico from Scarborough Sanitary District, and Cressy Maurer from Scarborough Land Trust. And also residents of Higgins Beach, Chan Sinnott and Deb Perkins Smith, Pine Point, Susan Clow, and Prouts Neck, Lucy Lacasse, and Sandy Butterfield. So their thoughtful questions and insightful suggestions helped shape the assessment, and I am happy to turn it over to Leela to walk us through.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here and the committee. It has been a pleasure working with the town and this committee. Our meetings that we had throughout this last 16 months or so have been really informative, great questions, and it's one of the best groups of people I've worked with on this type of project. So there's a lot of material that we produced as part of this. So we are going to walk through our products just kind of from the beginning to the end. And we'll start with the purpose of the project. So this was a screening level coastal flood risk study. So screening level means a high level review. We did not do any detailed modeling. We did not do any detailed survey or analysis of any one piece of the town, but rather we took a town-wide view to really do a surface level look at prioritizing and understanding what's at risk and what the town should focus on moving forward. So we proposed some high-level adaptation strategies. We did look at 3 different pilot projects to dive a little bit deeper, and we'll talk about that later. We also included a review of town ordinances. This was really to find opportunities to promote resilience. We did not produce any new town ordinance language, and we will talk about that later. So, and then throughout this project, there was some field work, public engagement, a lot of working group meetings, technical memos, and a story map. This started last spring, and we've, made progress between then and now. We are now at the council meeting. We are almost done with this project. There are a few reports that are still out for comment, and including the story map. So that should be considered draft form right now. That's still out for comment and still subject to revision. We have a couple more neighborhood meetings that we'll be doing in Higgins Beach and Pine Point in September. And we will be producing an executive summary that goes over the majority of this project, and that you should see that in October, if not sooner. So this project actually was started before the major flooding that occurred in January of 2024. This was not a result of that flooding, but it just was circumstantial timing. And we were able to look back at these photos and really understand some of those impacts that have been felt throughout the town. So these are all images you've seen. We all know that Higgins Beach, Pine Point are both at risk of flooding. Route 1, Payne Road, also were closed to flooding, as well as many other places. I tried to come down to take photos and I just kept getting stuck, unable to get farther in the town. So the first thing we did was the flood vulnerability assessment. So we wanted to understand which areas and what infrastructure are at risk to coastal flooding now and in the future. Coastal flooding is flooding due to high tides and/or coastal storm surge, and this will likely worsen with increasing sea levels. This study did not include flooding from rainfall events. There isn't quick data to be used for a screening level analysis like this, so I do want to be clear that this did not include that flooding from rain. So the coastal flood vulnerability assessment, we wanted to understand flooding due to high tides, just your regular everyday high tide, which we looked at mean high water, which is the higher of the 2 high tides that you would experience in a day, as well as the highest astronomical tide, which is the highest tide that you may likely experience in, let's say, a year, but not necessarily, but a highest tide you may experience that isn't tied to a storm event. So sometimes we call this king tides. We also wanted to understand flooding from coastal storms. So we looked at 10-year storms, 50-year storms, 100-year storms, also known as 1% annual chance storm, all the way up to the 500-year storm, as well as the tide level that was experienced in January. And that was the range of, if we look at that first row, we're looking at 7 different water levels. So high tide, king tide, 5 different storm surge events, understanding what that flooding would look like. And then we wanted to look at sea level rise. So we added sea level rise to each of those, and you get 42 water levels. So these are really just different combinations of, it could be sea level rise and a small storm, or a large storm and not much sea level rise. And those could produce really similar water levels. So there's many different ways that you can get to a particular flood level. 42 water levels is too much to really do for screening level analysis. So what we did is we grouped together similar levels. So you could see that a 100-year storm today would have a water level of 8.8 feet. And that's very similar to a 10-year storm in 2030 with 0.8 feet of sea level rise at 8.7 feet. So those are very similar. We found a lot of these different groups and whittled this down to 10 different water surface elevations. Each elevation may represent multiple different combinations of events happening. And those flood scenarios are what we then used for this analysis. Flood scenario 1 would be the lowest water level, and flood scenario 10 would be that highest water level. So that is your higher rate of sea level rise in 2100, a 500-year storm event. So that is the most extreme. And then, like I said, what isn't included is rain events. What also is not included in this is in just these elevations is wave action. So this is really just a static water level. Wave action was included to look at prioritizing roads, but it wasn't included because it wasn't included in producing the inundation boundaries that you'll see in the story map, because it is a dynamic process that was beyond this study. Okay, so I now want to bring us to the story map, and fingers crossed, this will go. So I'm just going to go back and forth from the presentation to the story map a little bit. The story map you can see it is linked on the town website. It is still being updated. If you've looked at it before, it might have been updated since you last looked at it. But this story map has a ton of information in it. It really walks you through the project, but really where I want to go are the flood exposure results. So we have here a map of the town, and we can add on any of these 10 flood scenarios. So if we look at flood scenario 7, for example, flood scenarios 8, 9, and 10, you won't see until the year 2100. So flood scenario 7 is really the last one in that 2050 time range. And so you can turn on different flood scenarios and zoom around, pan around, zoom in, zoom out of the town to really see where those impacts are. So this is the first way that the town or anybody could really interact with these results. You can turn on or off different layers to really play around with this. And back to our presentation. So that's one way that we have shown the results for this flood vulnerability analysis. The second way is in technical memos where we really documented our process, like us engineers are familiar with doing. So these really dive into the details. It's important for us to make these because if this project continues beyond GEI, then somebody can look back and criticize or move forward with any methods that we had done and know what the limitations are. So the first 2 documents we provided were a data review memo. So this is the data that we use, the sea level rise, the water surface elevations, how we came to those, and the GIS data that was used, which was mainly provided by the town because we do have a very robust GIS database. Then we had the flood vulnerability analysis results memo. So where we did have the story map with the flood boundaries, we also have tables that really itemize what is at risk of flooding. It quantifies. So these are just 2 examples. This first one is the buildings flood exposure summary. So across the top, we have our 10 different flood scenarios, and you can see the number of buildings that would likely be inundated. Flood scenario 4 is very similar to that January 13th event, 2024. So for that event, for example, 321 buildings were likely impacted. buildings are from the buildings GIS layer. This doesn't differentiate between a house or a garage or a shed. So that is included in that building's amount. And then the second table I have is for public roads, and this is just a summary. So we can see the length of road inundated in miles and the number of roads impacted. So for that flood scenario 4, we have 38 roads impacted, about 4 miles. We also produce tables that has every single road that would be impacted. So you can look road by road. These are both in the report and then also linked in the story map. So you'll be able to see that there as well. So what we wanted to do next was really focus a little bit more on roads. Over 100 public roads were identified as at risk to coastal flooding, 38 of those for present day water levels and 62 by 2050. It's very hard to have this list of roads and know what steps to take next. These lists were just based on exposure to flooding. So does water touch the road at all? And what we have found is that you can dive deeper in a consequences analysis to really start prioritizing roads. For example, there might be a road where that dead ends to the water and the very end of that road gets inundated. That's not as big of a deal as a road that is the one way in and out of a community, which is the case in many places in Scarborough. So we undertook a risk-based prioritization process to rank the roads based on the flood exposure and consequences. The consequences we looked at were the area impacted. So this was really the number of buildings that might be affected if a particular road were to be you weren't able to travel on it. We looked at also the impact to public safety. So was there a pump station on that road? Is there a fire station that's accessed by that road? We looked at damage potential. Is that subject to wave action, for example, the environmental impact, and also the economic impact. So how many cars travel that road? Is it in a downtown zone? This is the table of consequences that we created with a back and forth with the working group. You take a first stab at it, you look at the roads impacted and you think, oh, that kind of makes sense, or we wouldn't have thought that, maybe we need to add in the environmental impact. So we came to this final table. This can be something adjusted in the future if there's something else that the town wants to prioritize for. And then from that, we came up with these top 30 roads. These are listed in alphabetical order, not their actual ranking. The ranking is provided in one of the documents, but we didn't want that to be the main focus. We recognize that there are reasons to not go in rank order that is provided. This is really a tool for the town to use and not something that they need to follow. It's just one more addition to that decision-making process. So of these 30 roads, 3 of them already have adaptation projects underway. So Route 1 and Route 9 are Route 9 by the Audubon are both being looked at by Maine DOT, and then Sawyer Street is being looked at for active removal. This was also documented in a technical memo, so that's another one of the products of this. And then we'll go back to the story map. There is a section in the story map about the roads. So you can see a map of these top 30 roads. You can click on any road to kind of zoom in to that section that would be at risk and explore the roads that way.
And I'll also mention you can click on the little green icons on the map also to go directly to that portion of the road also. So you can either choose a photo or zoom directly on the map.
Seem to be frozen. Let's go back. All right, so then we've prioritized the roads, and now we want to look at some adaptation recommendations. This is a slide that just talks about the general adaptation strategies. So that could vary from doing nothing to building a seawall, to elevating a home, to treating, putting in nature-based solutions. Number or letter B, advance, is not one that you would think is something that would happen, but that is what has historically happened. So, you know, when people put fill in places like in Portland and then kind of move out into the water, that has happened in the past, not so much anymore. For Scarborough, one of the more complicated pieces for adaptation is that you have the Scarborough Marsh, which is heavily protected. It is one of the largest continuous salt marshes in Maine. It's a source of blue carbon, so it's a carbon sink. It's great for climate change. It is threatened by sea level rise, so if the marsh is not adapted as seas rise, then it is at threat of losing some of that wildlife there. This can be a challenge or an opportunity for adaptation. One thing is there are so many roads that cross through the marsh that are flooded. Route 1, Payne Road, Pine Point Road, for example. So those roads are, if they were to be elevated in order to adapt for the human needs of that road, it also offers an opportunity to increase the culvert or a potential bridge at those crossing locations to allow also the adaptation of the Scarborough Marsh. So it can go hand in hand. Additionally, the beaches in Scarborough, so a valuable asset to the town and also a challenge for adaptation. There are a lot of measures in place to protect sand dunes, and there are a lot of sand dunes in the town. So this offers a challenge or an opportunity for adaptation. We can adapt in a way that promotes the beach and dune migration and growth, and that can be both beneficial to the dunes and to the residents of the town. We produced another document, so a flood adaptation strategies report. This is currently in draft form, and this report has a high-level look of adaptation strategies, as well as a little more of a detailed look at those top 30 roads and some other vital, important pieces of infrastructure in the town, such as the Pine Point Fire Station, the wastewater treatment plant. And for those, we dove a little bit deeper into a few different adaptation strategies and some a very high level look at cost estimates. So we looked at relative cost estimates. I'll just bring all of these up. And in terms of dollar signs, and then we did put actual dollar amounts to this, but really what the gist we wanted to get across is a level of effort required. So $1 side would be a low cost measure that's likely feasible within any single fiscal year using existing town funds. So put up more barricades, for example, things like that. $2 signs would be a moderate cost measure. That does require capital improvement planning, but could be easily achievable within one budget cycle for the following year. $3 signs would be a higher cost measure that does require substantial funding or a multi-year implementation approach. And $4 signs is like, if the town were to pay for elevating Route 1, for example, that would be, I think DOT has said that's a $40 million project. So that's, your huge, very high cost measure. So if we go back to the story map, so we did provide that document. Actually, just have it open. We provided the report, but we also, if we look at these 30 roads and you click on one of the roads, you can look at adaptation, high-level adaptation strategies. So for Spurwink Road, we have elevate, so elevate the sections that are at risk, and enlarge the crossings. $3 signs, it would probably require a couple of years of planning and some funding to do that. Or option 2 would be do nothing. Do nothing costs range. They could be in the short term minimal. They could be in the longer term quite expensive. We do have some numbers on how much the town spent in repair for Bayview Avenue, for example. And if that starts happening every few years, then it does get quite costly. So I alluded to this a little bit before, but there are several roads that cross the marsh that are great for adaptation potential because those are the low-lying roads that are isolating communities. So I've circled some areas in the town here that can be isolated during these storm events. And the roads that isolate those areas that are at risk of flooding, these are all roads that also offer that potential to increase that tidal transparency. So a larger culvert to let more water through to help promote that salt marsh growth, which is really a win-win if you were to do that, because the road would more likely be accessed during storm events and you would help that marsh system. So here's an example of what it would look like to increase tidal transparency. So on the left is the culvert that is under Ocean Ave, where Higgins Creek is, heading down to Higgins Beach neighborhood. So that is tidally restricted. If that road were to be elevated and a larger crossing were to be in there, then you could help promote that salt marsh growth in that area. So in addition to those 30 rows, the story map also includes 6 other select town facilities for adaptation. So Eastern Trail, Ferry Beach parking lot, Hurd Beach parking lot, Pine Point Fire Station, the Public Works facility, and the wastewater treatment plant. And I'll just talk a little bit about Pine Point Fire Station, just so you can understand that high-level adaptation strategy that we're looking at. So here's the inundation boundaries on our right would be could be storm surge in 2050, or it could be high tide by 2100. So when we start thinking about some adaptation strategies, so option 1 could be flood-proofing the first floor of the building and elevating sensitive systems. So that could be putting in flood panels, making sure that there's no sensitive electrical equipment that's on that first floor that could be damaged. Option 2 could be putting a temporary flood barrier around the north side of the building, and that could be in place. It could be a permanent flood barrier, or it could be a temporary flood barrier for several months of the year, or just deployed when storms are anticipated to come. So that's a sense of the level of adaptation that we're looking at. So we then also looked at a neighborhood scale. So the neighborhoods we looked at were Higgins Beach and Pine Point. So starting with Higgins Beach, we have up here the coastal sand dune map. So anything in yellow is in a coastal sand dune. D1 is the frontal dune, which is more heavily regulated, and then D2 is the back dune, which also comes with some regulations. So some of the rules for these areas in sand dunes is in the frontal sand dune, you cannot make a new seawall, or in the back dune, you cannot make a new seawall. The back dune, you could elevate roads, but in the front dune, There are cases where sometimes you can elevate roads, but it would be a much more difficult process through Maine DEP. If we look at Higgins Beach now with flood risk, so this is what we're showing now is 2050 storm surge. Could also be 2100 highest astronomical tide event. So if we think about what could be allowed with sand dunes and what's at risk, there's a few different options we've laid out high level for this neighborhood. So one problem area is Bayview Avenue. So again, these inundation maps don't show areas of wave action, but we know that Bayview Ave does experience that wave action. There are new Maine DEP sand dune rules, so there is a chance that you could raise that existing revetment at Bayview Ave by 2 feet. There's an area of Bayview Avenue that doesn't have a revetment where there is some sand dune, where you may be able to add some shoreline stabilization measures. This is part of our pilot project, which we'll get to. And then the roads that are highlighted are some of the roads that are not in a frontal dune. So that eastern end of Bayview Ave, Champion Street, Vesper Street, and even Morning Street could be, hypothetically, could be elevated. It would pose difficulties with right-of-way access, with interior drainage, but you potentially could elevate those roads to allow emergency access, especially to that pump station, and to allow evacuation of this neighborhood. Another option would be to remove Bayview Avenue, restore or construct an engineered dune system. These roads, Ocean Ave, Pearl Street, Ashland Street, would then become dead end roads, similar to the Pine Point neighborhood, that kind of dead end to the beach. There is sewer infrastructure under there, so there would be complications with adapting that infrastructure to then that new setup in that area. A third option would be to do nothing, and then some example of costs. So the town spent $2.75 million on storm response, debris removal, and road and bridge repairs following the January 2024 storm events. That was townwide, not just Bayview Avenue, although Bayview Avenue did have quite a bit of damage during that storm event, as did the Champion Street pump station, and that cost is not included in this number. For Pine Point, mostly all of the Pine Point neighborhood is in a mapped sand dune. The majority of roads and houses are in the back dune, which is not as regulated, but then on that ocean side, you do have that frontal dune map. So here is flood inundation for coastal storm surge in 2050 or high tide in 2100. And what we're really prioritizing for Pine Point and Higgins is safety and evacuation. So for this neighborhood, and similar to Pine Point with that evacuation, we're really suggesting prioritizing elevating Pine Point Road for evacuation from this neighborhood. Alternatively, also East Grand Ave could be used for evacuation, but you would have to work with Old Orchard Beach on their portion of that road to really allow for that emergency evacuation. There are, you will see when you look at the material that there is also potential, hypothetically, you could elevate Jones Creek Drive, portions of King Street, and because they're in the back dune, you would be able to elevate them, and that could lead to more circulation during storm events. Elevating Jones Creek Drive could also have the impact of reducing some of that coastal flooding that you would see from that backside of Pine Point. It would probably face quite a bit of difficulty in terms of right-of-way in that area, and would it would alleviate flooding, but also could cause some more flooding during rainfall events. So there would need to be some drainage solutions that come into play. So these are all just high-level thoughts. We go through non-structural adaptation measures as well in our report and our story map. So just quickly go through some of these. Temporary flood barriers and road barricades. Scarborough already uses these quite a bit for safety and to close roads down that are flooded. Flood alert systems and early warning. So this is something that could be fleshed out a little bit more in the town of Scarborough. There are quite a bit of early warnings. I see the town fire department does sometimes put out a list of roads that they anticipate will be closed during coastal storm events. Making sure that that information gets to residents, I think would be the next step. I especially think about seasonal renters in these neighborhoods. I know that like Higgins Beach has a lot of winter rentals, and winter is when a lot of the storms come. So are those renters getting this information? And or even visitors or guests of a home. So just to know that this road could be flooded for 8 hours, you might be stuck in this neighborhood, just to be prepared. The other thing that comes to mind, and this is really stemming from the floods in Texas that were experienced earlier this year, is if flooding occurs in the middle of the night, how do we make sure that people get that information? So could that be like an audible siren system that is in these neighborhoods that really alerts the residents of flooding is coming? Be prepared. So that is another thought. Other non-structural, this kind of veers in structure a little bit, but dune restoration efforts. So there's a way that we believe that you could streamline a process for, this is just an example, for putting holiday trees. So here are holiday trees used at Popham Beach, but currently you need to get a permit for that every year, but there might be a way that you could streamline that process. So really every year, holiday trees, for example, are being used at Pine Point to help restore that dune. High water rescue vehicles. So these are used around the country, basically beefy fire trucks that can drive through floodways, flooded water to rescue people that are stranded. Continued public education and outreach, to really keep people aware of the risks and some of the processes moving forward. And then the last one on here is to discuss long-term managed retreat. So a lot of our adaptation strategies are focused around the year 2050. It's really hard to start planning infrastructure-wise for 2100. When we start looking at 2100, so these are very small. I didn't want anyone to really be able to look closely, but the figures that we're showing here on the right are for high tide in 2100. So there are areas in the town that will start to experience daily flooding. And it is something that you have to start thinking about in terms of how you adapt. So is that infrastructure adaptation, or do you start thinking about a long-term retreat process, and how do you go about doing that? So the first step is to really just start having that conversation. And this is the last one, the last non-structural adaptation measure that we discussed are policy measures. So we did an ordinance review. We looked at 4 town ordinances. And the purpose of this was to just identify areas in the ordinances where the language could be updated to promote resiliency. And we suggested some ways it could be updated, and also pointed to examples from other coastal communities of some other strategies those coastal communities use. We did not, as part of this, actually draft ordinance language. And there are still many steps to this before anything would even be official. So this is just very high level to start the discussion. And that is actually, I think I sent Jamie, we sent that out as draft, we received comments from it. And then we put out a more final document for that ordinance review. So there were 3 pilot projects that were part of this project. The first is Payne Road. That pilot project was looking at a more detailed flood risk and adaptation strategy for that road. So more than just that bullet high level. Higgins Beach had a pilot project, and that was looking at shoreline stabilization measures for that stretch along Bayview Avenue that doesn't have a revetment. And then Pine Point, we have drafted a homeowner adaptation guide. So what are the steps you would really go through to elevate your home if you wanted to? The first one we'll talk about is Payne Road. So here is a figure showing Payne Road, which is highlighted in green. That's the area that would be at risk of flooding. And then 3 different flood scenarios. So these all represent a 100-year storm. In present day is blue, 2050 is yellow, and 2100 is red. So the options that we looked at, well, we literally just looked at elevating the road, but we looked at a couple of different elevations and then talked a little bit through that, what it would mean to do nothing there. But really what we're looking at is elevating the road and replacing the culvert in those 3 crossing locations. So Dunston River, Finnard Brook, and Beaver Brook. Those culverts could all be sized to be larger to help promote that salt marsh growth as part of this adaptation plan. This would likely be a very expensive project. There are a lot of grant opportunities for this type of work. And especially if you were to put larger culverts in those locations, there are a lot of grant opportunities for that promotion of salt marsh growth, and it is considered a nature-based solution to put in a larger culvert. So you start to have access to more funding when you add these other elements to it.
Just worth noting that the top one, the arrow on the top of the screen is the top culvert shown here on the screen is the Scotto Hill Road crossing.
So it's actually the one on Payne Road, but the arrowhead itself is right above that Scotto Hill Road crossing. So there's 2 right kind of side by side there.
But that's the one that we're confronting now. We have a failed system and need to figure out how to solve that.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a potential for addressing both of these places at once. Probably cost savings in terms of construction. As you know, Route 1 is undergoing an adaptation study for DOT. It is likely many years out. Payne Road and Route 1 are the 2 main roads to get across town. And so there's a potential that you could design and elevate and construct Payne Road before Route 1 is complete to have at least one way to get through town during storm events. As part of this pilot project, we did refine the flood risk a little bit for Payne Road. GEI was separately from this project, but involved in the Route 1 adaptation study with DOT. So we have some more detailed actual modeling results that include Payne Road, so we could see how flood levels attenuate or reduce by the time they get to Payne Road. So the water level that you're going to see at Ferry Beach, Pine Point, is not the same water level that you will see at Payne Road. It does reduce pretty significantly. I think it's about 1.5 feet before it gets up there. So we did take that into consideration. There is a report for that project as well, and it is also highlighted in the story map. So the second pilot project we looked at was Higgins Beach, so this area circled in red, where there is not an existing revetment and there is some dune there. There is infrastructure in that road that's at risk of storm damage, the sewer line and also the roadway itself. An extension of the existing revetment could be a difficult permitting task, but what we did for this and what we still are doing, we are still at some point meeting with DEP as part of this, but the purpose of this pilot project is to bring DEP a few different concepts for this area. So one is a traditional revetment like you see right next door to that area. One is, I think I have it. One is a dune system with an engineered core. So that could be cobble, it could be core logs that are filled with sand, for example, but some sort of reinforcement under that dune system, and then build the dune back over it. And then the third option is just a dune system. So without any sort of that gray or engineered infrastructure. And the purpose of this meeting is to really get DEP to say to us what would or would not be allowed here. There are some complications with the sand dune rules, and there has been some mixed messages from DEP. So this will really document what could happen here so that the town would know what would be allowed. We haven't had that meeting yet with DEP, but they have these documents and we are just in a waiting pattern with them. The third pilot project is a homeowner adaptation guide, specifically for Pine Point, although it could easily be used elsewhere. And the purpose of this is for a homeowner to read through step by step what they would need to understand or who they should contact in order to elevate their home. So the steps are reviewing their flood risk. So that's, the story map. The second would be reviewing FEMA zones. So that's more tied to regulation and could be different. FEMA zones, you're given one inundation boundary. The story map, we have 10. So you understand a little bit more of the story map, but then the FEMA zones really tie back to the regulation. The coastal sand dune zone. So are you in a front dune? If you're in a front dune, well, then you have to elevate on stilts. Or are you in a back dune, but in a back dune, a FEMA V zone? So the different combinations of things to check if you're in a shoreline zoning overlay. And then understanding the implications of those different conditions. So front dune V zone, back dune V zone, back dune no zone. And contacting code enforcement to really understand what exactly you could do, and then hiring a contractor. So those are laid out. That is on the story map, and there's also a document for that. And those are also still in draft form. So then we're getting near the end of this. So story map and next steps. So the next steps for this project, we're still developing the story map. There are some of the work products, these technical memos are in draft form. Once they're finalized, they will be linked to in the story map. So that will be updated with all of those documents once they're final. Some of them are already in there. In early September, we will be holding neighborhood meetings at Higgins Beach and Pine Point. We'll be there to discuss a little more. We anticipate that we will have questions around homeowner adaptation. So we will be there to discuss a little bit more with the residents around some of the regulations that they may face and to understand their risk for where they live. And then in October, by October, likely before, we will be providing you all with an executive summary of really all of the products that we've produced, so you can see it all together, and then any remaining final work products that are currently in draft form. And that's it. What do we do?
I was gonna say, Tom is very impressed.
You did a wonderful job, Leila. Thank you so much. As liaison to the committee, and you want to talk about being above my pay grade. But I at least had an opportunity to see this ahead of time. And so I understand that for, our members of the council and for our residents who are seeing this for the first time, this is a lot of information to take in. So with that, I will turn it over for council comments and questions. Committee member comments are welcome. And then if we have time left at the end, I'm happy to take a little bit of public comment before we switch over to our business meeting. So is there anyone who would like to get us started? Corey, thank you.
Thank you for that great presentation. You mentioned that these projections don't take wave action into account. Could you speak briefly to sort of what would that entail in order to take that to another level in terms of just the level of analysis involved and what all goes into that. I mean, you alluded to the Texas flooding from earlier this summer, and right now there's a hurricane that's several hundred miles offshore that's causing a lot of damage in North Carolina due to waves and storm surge. And we're going to be getting waves from that in a couple of days. So that is something that I'm sure people will be curious about.
Definitely. So we did not take into account wave action for our inundation boundaries. We did take it into account for when we went through that road prioritization process where we came up with 30 roads. One of the things that we looked at was wave action potential. So roads were given more priority if they would face wave action. And that was based on their location and also whether they were in a FEMA zone. So one thing that's important to say is that the current FEMA maps do include wave action. And those are for 1% annual chance or 100-year storm events for present day water levels. They're not perfect, but they're pretty good. And you can see areas that would have wave action. They don't include sea level rise. So you don't see how that changes in the future. That is one of the biggest flaws of those. However, the state of Maine Department of Transportation is currently undergoing a statewide coastal flood risk model. They are working with Woods Hole Group. Pete's probably on a committee for this. And that probably in a year, but if we want to really set expectations, maybe like a year and a half, maybe we'll see.
Southern Maine is last on the
Okay.
list, unfortunately.
At some point, you will see results from this. They will be publicly available. I know that there's many different agencies in the state that are making viewers where you can pull data from this. So this will include wave action. My understanding is it's looking at 100-year, 1% annual chance coastal storm events now and in the future, a few different timeframes, including sea level rise. That data will be very valuable to the town of Scarborough. It will give you data. It could even be really plugged into our existing framework to reprioritize roads using that data once it's more refined. So the process is all there. It could be updated. So that's really with the town not needing to spend any money at all. That data will be available at some point.
Do you mind if I add to that very quickly? So that data is going to be dropping by region. So the Down East region is the modeling is pretty much done and will be released probably by the end of the year to the public. But for the mid coast and southern Maine, it's, where we still don't quite know when that's going to be. But the data that will be included there will include sea level rise scenarios, not the array of scenarios that GEI looked at here, but it will include 1.5 feet, 3 feet, and 4 feet sea level rise, which looks at 2050, 2070, and 2100. And it will also include what's called annual exceedance probabilities for the different storm events that include waves, that don't include waves, for everything from 100% event. So that's something that we have every single year, to something to the 1,000-year event, which is, has a very, very, very low probability of occurring, and everything in between. So, but the data that is going to come out of that will also have design elevations, which are what engineers kind of need. Leland could probably speak about this, but for kind of figuring things out in terms of what elevations are needed for certain things. So it's going to be a very rich data set, and it's going to be made public in different phases with, I would say, Southern Maine, hopefully in a year and a half, that's my guess.
Thanks, Pete. Other questions and comments? Yeah, Larry.
Just to follow up on that, as you were looking at some of those adaptation options, particularly down to beach communities, we'd want to be able, I believe we'd want to be able to plan for the impact of the wave action as well, to choose what's the best option. And so I think for what you're saying is that long before we would be making any clear-cut decisions around that, we should have much better data to make those decisions.
Yes, yeah. So this process, our adaptation strategies you will see will say elevate the road, but we are not saying what you elevate the road to. That should include wave action and a more, there are so many next steps to this, but the first step for you all would be to decide on which piece of infrastructure you would want to adapt. And then once that is decided, you then go into more analysis of really looking at wave action, getting real survey. We're using LiDAR data, which is great, but there are flaws. So getting actual survey and doing wetland delineation and engaging all the other specialists you need to advance that.
Sorry, one other question I had is, which will really point out my lack of knowledge on this. As you talk about raising roads, are you also considering the impact of the structures? Is it assumed that all those structures would be raised at the same time?
Like nearby houses, for
Right,
example.
yeah.
So that is one of the biggest constraints, when you're looking at, for example, Pine Point or Higgins Beach with these roads, pretty narrow roads in some places, especially Higgins. You can elevate a road. That doesn't mean that the house that's next to it is now not at risk of flooding. It's probably still at risk of flooding, and raising that road could have impact in terms of rainfall flooding. So, the biggest example that we can think of is New Orleans, where the whole city is surrounded by a levee. And that means that the whole city every day has pumping infrastructure to pump out rainwater. So anytime you build some sort of wall, which if you were to elevate a network of roads, you're essentially creating walls, you then have to think about how to get that other water out. So there's pluses and minuses all around.
Yeah,
I'll
Pete.
also add to that response. The only other thing that I would add is you also have to take into account grades for driveways. So if you're elevating a road 2 feet, how do you bring the grades so you can actually drive down a driveway and still park?
Right.
But I would like to say that there are communities in Maine who have already raised their roads pretty significantly. Kennebunkport, Goose Rocks Beach, they raised their road, Dyke Road and Kings Highway, anywhere from about a foot to almost 2.5 feet already. So they've kind of navigated the process and had to deal with some of these things. Granted, not as many structures as say Pine Point, but there are several communities that have already grappled with that topic.
Thank you. From a staff perspective, looking at this report, what happens next for our senior staff who now have this?
Start. You want me to start, or you go for it? You start.
Okay. It's actually a good question because next week Transportation Committee is meeting and this is on our agenda. Since you guys adopted the townwide transportation assessment, we have a list of roads and we're looking at high crash locations and safety concerns or capacity concerns. And now with this overlapping on top of it, it really starts putting that fine point on prioritizing for many different reasons. And so the roadway section is critical, I think, as we start moving forward and start prioritizing like our long-term CIPs for roadway projects. And that group, Transportation Committee, was tasked with taking the studies and trying to prioritize our roadways in that way. So I feel like this is a crucial step to start planning.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, also you mentioned Scotto Hill Road, so we know that we have a challenge there, a failed culvert. So part of it is thinking about the design for that and how we want to move forward and taking the information that is available through the vulnerability assessment, the story map, to help inform how we should be sizing that or what approach we should be taking, recognizing, as Leela was saying, the importance of tidal water and marsh migration, able to move farther inland. I don't know if it was fully clear. I mean, we've definitely seen it here in Scarborough, the difference between dealing with these large storm events on the marsh side and dealing with these large storm events ocean facing. And the marsh buffers so much of the energy of the storms that, yes, our roads flood, but it's a nice gentle flooding as opposed to a situation like Bayview Avenue where it is ocean facing, it's taking that wave energy. And so there's a lot more damage that's happening. So that's part of the reason, one of the major reasons that we're talking about tidal transparency for our, in our marsh system so that the marsh remains intact as a buffer for the infrastructure that's above it.
Yeah, Corey, and then Bill.
Sort of following up on that staff directed question. I don't know if this is best for Tom or for you, Angela, or maybe a snapshot of kind of the current grant landscape. I mean, we had sort of had our hopes at sights set on the Route 1 being raised, and then that money went away due to the federal government's action. Can you maybe give us a sense of what's out there and how we should be thinking about that?
Sure, I can start, but I know Leela, this is what she does every day too, so she, I'm sure has, but I know, like, we're looking at Scotto Hill Road. I think looking at it in kind of when we start prioritizing and looking at it one culvert at a time is a lot easier to get kind of that grant funding than, say, what she said, like a $50 million Route 1 marsh crossing. So those larger grants, that's where we're seeing is like obviously paused, but I think there's still opportunities through the state that they are administering. And then, like I said, kind of a pot of money that they can do on multiple projects, I think is helpful. So we are pursuing those opportunities through Payne Road and the Scotto Hill Road for that matter. So I didn't know, I know we
Yeah.
talked about a little bit of Payne Road.
Yeah, and Payne Road there is a grant application out for Payne Road right now that GPCOG led, and I forget what grant that is.
National Fish and Wildlife
Okay.
Foundation.
Yes, so a National Fish Wildlife, or NIFWIF, as we like to call it, grant. That would include Payne Road to start advancing design or analysis. You know, there's so many pieces to this. The DOT has a grant called the Main Infrastructure Adaptation Fund. They have grants and they, during one of the Route 1 meetings, separate project, they did say that Payne Road would be a great project for this type of grant, a Main Infrastructure Adaptation Fund grant. That will come out next year, and that will prioritize nature-based solutions. So larger culverts will be part of that. So if that's part of a Payne Road project, then it would look good on a grant application. So there was a lot of kind of confusion around what will be happening with grant funds, but we have found that there still are quite a bit of grant options that are available, and especially for these nature-based solution strategies.
Yeah, I would just also say the value of this study, kind of understanding where our vulnerabilities are. You know, grants take years often to identify the need or the project, to identify the grant opportunity, to apply for it, to get some confirmation, as opposed to working kind of in crisis mode that we've got a failed culvert that needs to be fixed. So it's really ideal to have this sort of line of sight into the future and to start to line these things up years out, frankly.
I certainly join the counselors in applauding the assessment that you've done. This is a very sobering subject. I will attend your Higgins Beach session because I live in Higgins Beach and based right out on the marsh. And so it's very personal to me, the circumstances that are presented. I have heard Bayview Avenue owners talking about elevating their houses or rebuilding at an elevated state, so that rather than trying to have further seawalls, their concept of being able to survive is to be able to have the living space of their house located 10 feet higher up than it's presently located. Because Bayview Avenue is obviously subject to enormous risk. So thank you for your work. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Any other council comment or committee member comment? Yeah,
I'd just like to say I really enjoyed being part of the workers and kudos to, I don't know if that's on. I think, and kudos to the staff as well as the consultants. I think you've got a very robust process that I think will hold you well for going forward and looking for additional funding and assistance in doing future projects. So.
yeah, let's see.
It's on.
Should be all
fine,
set.
Okay, I just wanted to, again, echo, just, I think that the staff and GI have done an amazing amount of work that you've produced and really useful products. And I am very happy to hear you emphasize title transparency, but I also want to say that also poses a risk in hand with increasing title transparency in the future. With certain infrastructure projects, we need to emphasize marsh restorations so that we can keep that marsh climbing as sea level rise climbs. And when you increase that transparency, you're not just flooding out the marsh. So those two things really go hand in hand. But this has been amazing work, and I really appreciate everything that you've done for the town.
Is there any members of the public who would like to come to the podium and make public comment at this time? Certainly. Yes, please, sir.
My name's Alan Arakelian at 55 Bayview Ave. And I have photos of the damage from, I believe it was February, okay, 2 years ago or a year or so ago. And there's a problem with overtopping of some of the seawalls that have just recently been built at the end of Champion. I have photos showing that there's at least a 2-foot difference. And all the neighbors or residences, I should say, on Shipwreck do a great job of maintaining the elevation and preventing the ocean from coming over. But I have the photos here, and you can see it. The 2 houses at the end of Champion had a seawall rebuilt in 2023. And the water just flows through like a river. Now, the marsh in the back is your detention area to prevent the water from flooding the people ahead of it. Now, if the water goes over like it does on Bayview Ave, where it broke through, it floods down into that marsh area and it floods all the neighbors in the low area. And these people that build the houses up, they don't care because, hey, they're not gonna get affected. But the poor people that are down below near the marsh, they get flooded out, and it's not right. There are rules in FEMA that says if you have a privately owned seawall or levee, you are to maintain a cushion to prevent overtopping, and they're not doing that. And how they got the permit to build it at a lower elevation than it should be is beyond me. I don't know. And it should be corrected. I mean, that could be done with sandbags or probably not sandbags because of the ocean, and you'll see in the photos. Can I provide these photos to you so you can study them and maybe make some corrections there?
You can provide the photos to me, sir, since this is my
Thank
meeting
you.
technically, and then I will make sure that they go to the appropriate. staff.
Okay, sounds
Certainly.
good. Can I give them to you now?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to make comment? Sure, you may come to the podium. We have probably about 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna,
Questions, okay?
you can ask questions? Sure. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Lauren Johnston. I live on Coulthard Farms Road in Scarborough. Excuse me. One of the issues, I guess, has come up for us that live on that road is the removal of the road, Sawyer Road, and how that's going to impact us. We're the little known marsh in Scarborough. our house is right on the Mar. We've been there 26 years. So there hasn't really, at least to my knowledge and the knowledge of the people that I spoke to on our street, we haven't really been part of the process, and that might be our error, but none of us could think of having been contacted by anybody about what that might do in terms of marsh migration. And will that raise the water level where we live? Our neighbor's been flooded out twice in terms of water in their daylight basement. There's another neighbor who has the sump pump runs all the time. We've also had beavers who've been trapped out illegally twice in the 26 years we've been there that also impact the movement of water. That last big rain we had, I guess it was that in February, we had water up to our basement. Luckily, it didn't come in. It was pretty impressive. So my question is just, where do we fit into this process about having some input and getting some questions answered that I don't think can be answered here tonight in terms of how we're going to be affected, assuming that, and it sounds like it's going to happen, that road is taken out because we live upstream from there.
Yeah, we certainly have received communications. I'm not sure if it was from you, but many of your neighbors as well. I think we are looking to use our consultants to better understand that marsh migration by removing the culvert that currently sits on Sawyer Street. And we do intend to reach out to you with those results. So I think we're going to have a public meeting on September sometime, mid-September. But we may, if it serves you better, we may have a special direct meeting with individual property owners. I don't think there's more than half dozen or so that would be potentially affected.
Thank you. The other thing too, since I've got the mic, just to make a pitch for the Spurwink Marsh in Scarborough. And the fact that we have homeowners, we have the land trust, we have Rachel Carson, we have the town, we have all these stakeholders and living there 26 years and trying to communicate with everybody has been beyond my capabilities. And I really think that the town needs to have some kind of working group with these entities, because what they do or don't do directly it affects the health of that marsh. And it's beautiful. I have sent some of you pictures over the years. To me, the wildlife rivals the Scarborough Marsh. I've seen more wildlife there than I've ever have in the Scarborough Marsh when it's healthy. Right now, it's not healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to make comment or question on our workshop? And I'll give it about 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to end the workshop so that we can transition over to our business meeting.
Hi, Allison Bristol, also on Bayview Avenue. And I wanted to thank the work study group with a special shout out to Deb and Chan for being their eyes and ears for Higgins Beach. I also want to say I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not representing the community or the Higgins Beach Association. And this too is above my pay grade, all of this scientific data. What I've sort of focused on is the zoning piece of it, which has been, part of the program. And I became aware of the draft of the ordinance review memo a couple of months ago and made some comments, made some recommendations on my own. I appreciate Jamie and Autumn and who am I forgetting? Angela and GEI for taking those into consideration. I did have a chance to look at the memo that was posted around noontime today, and appreciate the fact that you took those under consideration and incorporated my comments. The one thing that I would ask as part of this process and as the town goes forward, and I know this is just a first step, very important to keep the public engaged. And being engaged doesn't necessarily mean you have 4 weeks to post comments on the story map. If you have comments, it's dense information. It's a lot of information. what the town does with the zoning is going to impact people's lives. And example, with the ordinance review memo that was posted today, that was the first time that the idea of development transfer provisions was mentioned. It was not in the draft, so this is the new idea. Also under neighborhood adaptations in the story map, there's a plan for long-term managed retreat. Includes exploring evaluating the feasibility of property buyouts and land use transfers. So this impacts people's lives, and before any of this gets too far down the pike, I certainly hope that the town would be truly engage people, not just ask for feedback with proposed documents on the website. So time will tell, how it'll all fall into place. And I think how the town decides to define high-risk flood zones will be very telling in how it'll impact people. And lastly, I'd like to thank the work group for recommending the Bayview Avenue project. Our dear neighbor, the late Vin Bombachi, lobbied for this for years to no avail. So in Vin's honor, let's finally get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Could you
Jan.
remind everyone the date and place for the Higgins Beach meeting in September?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie.
Sure. I will remind everyone of both meetings. So there is a meeting scheduled in Higgins Beach on September 4th at 6 p.m. at the Higgins Beach Association Clubhouse. We will be focused very much on Higgins Beach at that meeting. It will be available in person and on Zoom. I believe the town website, I requested that the calendar be updated with that information today. So if it hasn't been posted today, it should be there by tomorrow. And then the Pine Point neighborhood meeting, it will be on September 9th at 6 p.m. at the Pine Point Fire Station. And again, it'll be available in person and on Zoom.
Great, thank you very much. With that, I am going to go ahead and wrap this evening's workshop. I want to thank everyone again for their dedication and work to the working group. We have some of the best resident volunteers that a town could possibly ask for. I would also like to applaud our senior staff who participated and led this group, as well as our consultants from GEI. Thank you very much, Leela. With that, I will go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we will begin our business meeting at 7 p.m. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Scarborough Town Council. Today is Wednesday, August 20th, 2025. I would appreciate if you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tody, could you call the roll, please?
Counselor Doherty?
Here.
Counselor Kane?
Here.
Counselor Donovan?
Here.
Counselor Fellows?
Here.
And Council Chair Sider.
Here.
Thank you.
Item 4 on our agenda this evening is general public comment. If there are members of the public that are here to speak on items that are not on our agenda, then now is your time to approach the podium, and you may have 3 minutes to speak on something that is not on this evening's agenda. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the public record.
I'm Sue Hamill, and I live on Bay Street in Pine Point. And I just would like to request once again that the town council and town manager consider posting the emails and comments that you receive on items which are on the agenda. Post them to the website, in the way that the planning department does for the planning board meetings. It's transparent and inclusive, which is kind of words that I keep hearing. And it would just be a way to engage better with the community, and so that we can see those comments as well. The only way we have access, they're part of the public record, and the only way we have access to those emails now is by a Freedom of Information request. And it just makes really good sense. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. I do have to ask for those that are new or not accustomed to attending our public meetings, I am going to ask you to refrain from applauding or cheering or calling out. And that goes in both the affirmative and the negative, just so that we can maintain an orderly meeting. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Pat Deglon. I live at 7th Avenue 2. I'm on the board of directors for the Pine Point Association, and I'm here to speak to you tonight about some of our recent activities. This is our second year for the association, and we've had a very active membership drive. To date, the association has 73 household memberships, 26 individual memberships, and 8 business memberships, representing 112 addresses. You may know we had to cancel our early summer meeting on June 24th due to extreme heat in June. So we've moved the meeting to Tuesday, August 26th at the Firehouse at 6 p.m. And I'm here to extend an open invitation for all of you to join us. Also, on July 14th, we sent a letter to the town council and the town manager to readdress some of the numerous public safety issues that continue to be raised by our membership. The top concerns are parking, speeding, flooding, and the roundabout at the end of Pine Point Road. To date, we have not received your formal response yet, and it would be very beneficial to all if a response can be provided before our August 26th meeting. Regarding the upcoming Pine Point paving and parking space painting project, a lot of P's. Many of us attended the meeting on July 29th to hear the presentation regarding the complete street proposal for East Grand Ave, and we very much look forward to hearing about the next steps. But we have significant concerns about the upcoming paving and parking space project beginning this fall. That will affect King Street and Jones Creek Drive and the side streets. Numerous homeowners cannot see exiting their driveways and turning onto Jones Creek Drive. And we feel that, there's significant safety issues due to cars, large trucks, large SUVs, and even big campers parking in the marked parking spots on Jones Creek Drive. Cars actually have to pass them if they're following the other way and cross over the yellow line and travel in the opposite lane. And pedestrians cannot walk safely against the traffic on Jones Creek where the cars are parked. We are requesting that a plan be put in place to assist with the parking issues on Jones Creek Drive before the paving begins in the fall, and we'd like to be part of that. And finally, we want you to know that there have been at least 4 traffic calming evaluation applications submitted regarding parking on Jones Creek and the need for crosswalks from the side streets that lead to the public rights of way. At least 30 signatures involving only 2 of the side streets were collected very easily and submitted, and Chief Holmquist has acknowledged receiving them. So we look forward to the response to those requests. And I'm happy to submit to you tonight a copy of our summer newsletter, and thanks for the time.
Thank you very much. We do have some hands raised online this evening, and I just want to reiterate that this is for non-agenda items. We do have a public hearing on the agenda tonight, which I suspect drove many of you out to our meeting this evening. So this is general public comment for non-agenda items. I will go to online speakers. Liam, please. And same rules apply. Please state your name and your address for the public record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
This is Matthew Keith from 8 Pleasant Ave. First off, a big thanks to the Vulnerability Commission that happened earlier. That was really informative. I really appreciated all the hard work that everybody's put into that and will continue to put into that. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. I was putting together a table. I just wanted to follow up with the town council and the community to just encourage continued awareness. And I know there's limited involvement that we can have, but around the ice facility over by Holy Donuts, just as things have shifted in our country, I'm going to try to stay as far away from getting into details there as possible. But you know, it's clear that the role of ice has changed significantly and likely will continue to change. And I think it's imperative on all of us to it's kind of tucked away. Nobody knows much about it. And so all of us to stay aware. I want to thank Councillor Anderson for looking into that and reaching out to them, and just want to encourage our council and all of our citizens to just stay engaged around that and make sure that we know that they know that we are keeping an eye out and aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Anyone else online, Liam? That was it. Anyone else in the room wishing to make general public comment? Certainly.
I would, Sam Cafone, 184 US Room. I'd like to just make another complaint about the surf kites in Nonsuch River. I don't know if we could do an ordinance or something, but that's not an area for those. I'm a mooring holder and a lot more people are, and they're just endangering everything. It's a pretty narrow channel to navigate when you come in, especially the way they did the dredging. We don't need them in the river. They need to be on the beach side, so far out. And if we could look into getting something done with that, that'd be a good idea.
Great. Thank you, Sam. Any other general public comment this evening? Seeing none, I will close general public comment. Item 5 is the minutes from our July 16th, 2025 Town Council meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Thank you, Corey. Is there any council discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that is unanimous. Thank you. Item 6 is adjustments to the agenda. I do not have any adjustments to the agenda this evening. Item 7 is items to be signed treasurer's warrants. I took care of those prior to the meeting. And item 8 is the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be brief, knowing that folks are here for something further on the agenda. I don't often have such an audience to speak to, so I'll take advantage of the opportunity. Very quickly, Eastern Trail update. Very pleased we had a successful groundbreaking ceremony on July 24th. That project is, at that point, was 3 weeks underway and continues. Just to remind folks, that is coming in kind of 2 phases. One, the section from Pleasant Hill Road to Wainwright Field in South Portland is due to be delivered to us and open for use by October next year. At this point, based on the progress made, I expect they'll be beating that deadline quite easily. The full project is to be delivered to us by October 27. I should also mention, we're still at the infancy of the project and kind of in the simple part of the project. I do always have a concern about staying on budget, so I'll continue to bring this up as a talking point as we go forward, but very pleased to finally get underway. With respect to Scotto Hill Road closure, this came up a bit in the conversation earlier in the workshop, but that road has been closed for about 2 months. There are 2 failed culverts close to Flaherty's Farm, their retail store. And at this point, because of the tidal nature of the flow through that culvert, we are unable to do any work until November, essentially because of its natural resource conditions. Work can only occur in the period between November and April, so the winter months, colder months. In the meantime, we are evaluating kind of all the options, including traditional option of replacing the culvert. Probably we'll have to upsize it, but we're also considering the option of removing it and permanently closing that road, which I think has obviously some huge ramifications for our community. We'll be looking to engage the public to understand better about what that might look like, but I think it's only fitting that we consider all options at this point. To update the public and the council did approve some matching funding with Scarborough Little League to put lights at Peterson Field. My staff has been meeting with them over the last couple of months. I was part of a meeting today. The town will be going out to formal bid to finalize and better understand what the cost of that project is. Those will be improvements to town-owned facilities, and so those lights will be ours. So it's really important that we're involved in specifying the quality of that infrastructure as it will be for ours to own and maintain. And we'll certainly keep you up to date. The expectation is to have these lights in place and playable for next spring. With respect to Sawyer Street update, this also came up in the workshop earlier. For those of you that aren't aware, for about 2.5 years, we've been in conversations with our colleagues in Cape Elizabeth. Sawyer Street is a small street from Spurwink Road that goes across Spurwink Marsh into Cape Elizabeth. That road floods on a very consistent basis and will continue to. And at this point, we've been further exploring the option of removing that section of roadway permanently as opposed to repairing the road. That would include elevation at some great expense. We do have significant grant funding to offset these costs. I'm pleased to say those funds have now been released, and so the project's kind of getting restarted. We hope to convene another community meeting in September to kind of reintroduce it for those that didn't know about it or have forgotten, frankly. And then fairly shortly thereafter, both communities will be looking to discontinue the road. That will be an action required by this body. We heard from some residents this evening that live further up the marsh, just understandably concerned or want to know what impacts, if any, there might be upstream by allowing more flow up in that area. And we're certainly going to do our part to provide the information as best we can to them. We have committed taxes. I want to mention at this point, we're scheduled to mail tax bills. I would say certainly by Labor Day. We do use a third-party vendor, so some of that is out of our hands, but I expect by the end of this week, we will have delivered all the product to them, and I expect by Labor Day, at the latest, bills will be received. I would want to mention that the final number for the tax rate is $11.33 per thousand. That's 1 cent lower than was expected at the time of the budget approval. I guess a segue into property tax relief. This council and past councils have always had property tax relief as a real important matter, doing what we can at the local level, but also participating at the state level. There was in this past legislature, there was an act to provide a working group to better understand some of the strategies at the state level. I'm very pleased that our own assessor, Nick Cloutier, has been appointed to this fairly austere group representing really the assessment community, but I think Nick brings with him a lot of other experience, so we'll have a seat at the table. I'm very pleased with that. And so we'll continue to provide updates to the council and to the public as we go forward. I also want to mention this past legislative session, there was some fairly impactful, we believe, legislation passed, so-called LD 1829. This does a number of things that we're still trying to sort through. I've been working with our colleagues at the Greater Portland Councils of Government, and next Monday on the 25th of August, we'll be hosting a meeting at the Public Safety Committee, Safety Building. And all GPCOG members are invited. This is an opportunity for us all to hear from an expert of land use law to understand what the law is and to start some conversation around what that means and whether we, as a region and a group of communities, want to provide some response to that. So again, the meeting is really intended for other municipal officials. It will be taped and provided as a viewing option for you. So I just wanted everyone to know that we're interested to learn more about how our colleagues are going to be approaching this issue and whether we can partner. Folks that live in kind of North Scarborough, West Scarborough area, you've probably noticed there's a number of signs that have gone up over the last week or so. I think they're still shrouded, and so you're probably wondering what they say. DOT is doing a culvert or bridge replacement on Minchell Hill Road. This is at the right at the Gorham line. This is the crossing at the Nonsuch River. It will cause about a 45-day road closure, and there'll be detours that impact a number of Scarborough roads. Those signs are all related to that detour. I think we've put the word out pretty well to the folks that live and will be most directly impacted, but there's a lot of commuting traffic that will use that road. So that's what that's all about, just so you know. Just on the lighter side, perhaps, I say the lighter side, but I was greeted first thing Monday morning with a series of concerned residents about a helicopter landing in their neighborhood, in their backyard, which is not a very common occurrence. And so that's how we were greeted this week, only to be followed up Tuesday morning by a plane landing on Pine Point Beach. So I'm not sure what it is about this aerial assault, but staff is already looking at current ordinances. We think we have some deficiencies in some ways that we could perhaps tighten up our local laws around these sorts of activities, and had initial conversations with Ordinance Committee to see if we could start advancing those, so we will. And lastly, just election housekeeping issues. This is the open nomination period. Currently, we have 2 council seats, 1 Board of Education seat, and 1 sanitary district seat available for this upcoming November ballot. And at this point, we have 3 individuals who've taken out papers for the council seats and no one for either Board of Education or sanitary district. So my public service announcement is to please consider running for local office. You can use anyone who's willing to serve. So that period ends September 3rd, so it will be upon us fairly quickly. So please consider that. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone have any questions or comments for the town manager? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 9 is standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. In appreciation of the fact that many of our committees took August off, I suspect that there's maybe not as much to report this evening, but I will open the floor to counselors who would like to give an update. Yeah, Corey?
Sure, thank you. I'll give a quick update. Planning board did meet on Monday night. One important update, which folks may be aware of and which relates at least indirectly to, I think, why a lot of folks are here, is that the proposed Marshview housing project withdrew. So they were not on the agenda, and that project presumably will not be moving forward, at least in the foreseeable future. The planning board did focus on 3 different proposed single-family housing developments totaling about, I believe, 30 homes. There were no final approvals granted, but there was some discussion on that. And the board did approve a plan to renovate and repurpose the building that's just across Route 1 here, right next to the Bessie complex, including Scarborough Grounds and O'Reilly Secure. It's a group that's led by our own Cindy Taylor, who is a longtime Scarborough resident, has done a lot of great work, including the Bessie complex. And that building has a lot of historical significance, and it was interesting to hear about that, and glad to see that it's going to be sort of brought back to life, and there'll be some landscaping improvements and some traffic flow improvements as well. That's it.
Right, thank you, Corey. Any other committee updates at this time? Yeah, Larry.
Just getting going with assignments and appointments for being elected to the council. I met with communications chair with that, and the main focus was finalizing the town survey that is being sent out this fall. We discussed kind of reinvigorating the council corner articles in the town newsletter and updated a calendar for each of us to participate in that. And all related to that, how we could do some more of the council corner live events where the council is available to the community for different subjects. And our next meeting for that is tomorrow. I've joined the School Building Communications Committee. This is a committee in town that's charged through the school district to inform about the updates of the school building project for now through the referendum vote. And it's really, really talented group of people. I can't believe what they've gotten done in just a few weeks around planning for communications out to the community. And you should be seeing a lot of results from that. They're doing a series of both media and information events, everything from in the school buildings as school starts to signage and mailers and some media advertising. I can't call it advertising really, but media information out to the community. So please be on the lookout for all that. They're really doing a fantastic job with it. And the last thing is the Community Services Advisory Board. That committee hasn't met since I was appointed to that. I did meet with Nick and Nicole, who are the leaders of community services, and discuss priorities and goals. And we'll meet with the chair of that advisory board, Tricia Brigham, prior to that first meeting, which is in September.
Great, thank you, Larry. Any other council liaison updates? Great. Nothing from me this evening, Tom. Well, no, that's not true. Tom and I had the pleasure of doing the groundbreaking for the Eastern Trail a few weeks ago, which was an honor to participate in. I also last week had the pleasure of giving opening remarks at the Intermed groundbreaking, which is located in the Downs. And so I want to once again extend my appreciation for being allowed to participate at that event. It's really exciting to see some of these projects as we've been waiting for really come to fruition. And then the only other thing I had on my calendar is for next Monday for that GPCOG meeting, which is at 6 p.m. And I will be in attendance for that meeting. Moving on to our agenda. For the next several order numbers on our agenda, I will read the order number. I will ask for public comment, and then when public comment is closed, I will turn it over to the council. And so we have several public hearings this evening. Order number 25-069 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 405, the zoning ordinance, to allow landscape contractors in the RH zone, light industrial and industrial districts. This is normally teed up for us by our planning director. Tom, do you want to say a few things before
I think I can. This matter really came to the town's attention. There was an existing landscape contractor that was working from their residence, living on Running Hill Road in the Running Hill Road district, that came to our attention that obviously was not an allowed use in that zone. And we brought this through a fairly long, arduous process, starting with long-range planning late last year. And it's kind of moved through our process fairly slowly, but deliberately, being heard at the ordinance committee through the course of the spring. And then on June 11th, the ordinance committee recommended it to come forward with an addition. That addition was to also prohibit all burning of landscape materials as part of the performance standards as well. The council took this up at their July meeting. Planning board has had their hearing on it, so I think it's gone through its full process. Essentially, it allows, as a permitted use in the Running Hill District, landscape contractor as an allowed use.
Excellent. Thank you, Tom. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make public comment this evening? Welcome.
Hi, Denise Hamilton, Two Rod Road. The landscape contractors is a business that we see that belongs in the light industrial. Definitely the type that we would want to see more of there, unlike the 24/7, 365 trucking terminals. What stands out in the current draft is that there are specific performance standards written for the Running Hill Gorham Road mixed-use zone, yet I don't see any corresponding performance standards listed for the light industrial zone. This is troubling. For almost 4 years now, residents in and around the light industrial district have been voicing complaints about the lack of meaningful performance standards. We've raised these issues repeatedly, and yet the draft still seems to leave the light industrial zone with the same lax protections. If the ordinance can include detailed standards for Running Hill Gorham Road, it should certainly do the same for the light industrial zone. Without clear standards, the burden of noise, traffic, and environmental impacts falls disproportionately on the surrounding neighborhoods. I urge the council to ensure that any zoning amendments moving forward include strong, enforceable performance standards for the light industrial zone so that the residents and businesses alike have clarity and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Council discussion. Scott?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I mean, I'm all for small businesses, so I think you should allow it everywhere in town myself, but you know, if you have a homeowners association, you may not want it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think small businesses is a great thing. I think it's good. I think landscaping, if somebody has a landscaping business, if they want to do it out of their home, I think it's fine. We went through a whole big process here, but just for one little area, but I think it should be allowed anywhere in town. There's people now that do have businesses out of their homes, you know, you can have an accountant, there's certain things you can. I don't know what the parameters are, but I think we should encourage young people to be entrepreneurs at any level we can. So, yeah, 100%.
Thank you. Other council member comment on this? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? I show that as unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to our next order number 25-070 is a 7 p.m. public hearing regarding the establishment of a Dunston Omnibus Municipal Tax Increment Financing District. Tom.
Yeah, so I'll just provide a couple of introductory comments here. This also came through a normal process. It was proposed sometime mid-spring, went through and spent a lot of time at the Finance Committee, who've recommended in front of the council at this point. There's no question that the impetus and the timing that brought this forward this spring was the request for a credit enhancement agreement for the so-called Marshview project. Subsequently, the council has defeated that credit enhancement agreement, so that's no longer in play, and that's no longer necessarily a consideration for this TIF district. Despite that defeat, I think there are strong financial reasons, and I encourage you to continue considering this, and certainly pleased to go into those in better detail, perhaps at second reading. But the shelter benefits alone, I think, in an area that has land that has developed potential with existing zoning and not in need of or request of any incentives, I think it just makes financial sense for us to be prepared for what is very likely to come. Just one point I would like to clarify, and I say this in terms of the council's received, by my count, over 60 communications since first reading. most of which have come in the last couple of weeks, it seems to me. But one of the points of, I think, perhaps confusion or misunderstanding that I'd like to try to clarify is that as part of the application for establishing a TIF district, this is all administered and overseen by the Department of Economic and Community Development. One of the things that they require we do is to establish a boundary, obviously, but then to also project what the likely value creation, what's going to happen within that district, specifically what sort of taxable value will be created. And then that then turns into calculating what the likely shelter benefit is. To do so, in a simple case, if it's a single parcel of land, someone wants to build a 10,000 square foot building, and we have a pretty good sense of what that future value might be. In a larger sense, the Downs is another example. It's a large project, but they spent a lot of time for their own purposes, understanding what they wanted to do, and they were helpful in that calculation. In this instance, we're really left to our own devices. There's no specific proposal in front of the town, and so we don't have a project to analyze, if you will. So in the absence of that, we looked at what else existed, and the town undertook for its own purposes a study back in 2014 from a planning perspective that looked at this very area. And our interest then was to understand what is the development potential here, what are the development patterns, what might they look like, where might roads go. For those of us that live in that area of town, it would be great to have additional roads to take the pressure off Route 1 and Broad Turn and in Pine Point. And so I think we did that study. Largely nothing's changed from a land use point of view in 10 years. And so that was the basis of our internal projection, understanding what a development scenario may look like. It is in no way suggestive that that project is hypothetical. It does not exist. There's no application, and there's no assurance that that would ever happen. But for purposes of this process, we had to model what it might look like. So I just want to clarify that the so-called number of homes and square footage of commercial space, that is a hypothetical development scenario. It is not in front of us, certainly will not be approved, and certainly won't happen as that hypothetical example envisions.
Thank you, Tom. The only other thing I will add is that unlike our previous item, which was a second reading where the council then deliberated the question, this is simply a public hearing, and so there is no council deliberation or action this evening on this item. And so at this time, I will turn this over to the public for the public hearing. And when the public is finished, I will close the public hearing and we will proceed on through our agenda. So at this time, members of the public who would like to speak on this item may approach the podium. I ask that you please state your name and address for the public record and that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hi, Nina McKee, 309 Black Point Road. I just very quickly, because I know lots of people want to speak. First of all, thank you for this opportunity. And also, just quickly, seeing all the people in this room is fabulous. And the meetings are the first and third Wednesday of every month. And something, it really is fun to see the deliberations. And also, it's the only way to really know what's going on in the town. So I really hope everybody comes to the next one. So having said that, I only have two suggestions. One is, I just don't understand why Augusta can dictate to the towns how much building should be going on. And maybe the council could look into that and maybe with other towns stop that, because that certainly increases growth. And I hope that that can be omitted. The other suggestion I hope you will discuss is that what is it? Here, I wrote it down and it's really, it's the moratorium. If you could please discuss about a building moratorium for, to define it and then to execute it. that would be really, really great. So those are the two things, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Michelle Hayes, 5 Indian Hill Lane. I've been a Scarborough resident since 1993. We selected Scarborough for its beautiful beaches, trails, marsh, and love that there was still a working waterfront. My 2 children attended Little Folk Farm and Scarborough schools K through 12, receiving an amazing education. My parents moved to Scarborough and lived here for the last 10 years of their lives and also loved it. I was fortunate to spend a 25-year career with Hannaford Supermarkets, headquartered in Scarborough. Our family loves Scarborough. I'm here tonight as I'm very concerned about the impact of growth on a number of issues. Strain on our infrastructure, unsafe congested traffic intersections, strain on our schools, $21,000 to educate one student today. So every time we add a house, even if there's only one child, we're going in the hole, and the more housing we build, the more that we're spending. Our taxes from those homes don't begin to cover the added expense. Loss of green space and impact of development on the marsh and wildlife. Taxpayers supported CEAs for housing with no preferential eligibility for Scarborough citizens. Huge unnecessary transfer of wealth from taxpayers to developers. Impact on first responders, we have a wonderful first responder group, but they're overtaxed, and we're now having to hire 8 new employees for the fire department due to growth challenges. Scarborough does not need to offer TIFs. We do not need to incent growth in a town that's highly in demand. And as Speaker of the House, Ryan Vecto, recently stated in his interview, Scarborough has done more than their fair share of providing housing. Surrounding communities need to step up. Over the last 5 years, Scarborough has allowed 1,238 new units, representing a 12% increase in units. Over the last 10 years, Scarborough has allowed 2,365 units. That's a 25.4% increase in units in just 10 years. I propose Scarborough take the lead on creating a regional task force on housing and help create a strategic and fair Southern Maine housing solution. We've done our share. It's time for other towns to step up. We talk a lot about affordable housing needs. I agree. The Nonsuch River Apartments at 8 Corners is nothing but affordable. It's puzzling to me how an out-of-state developer got approval to clear-cut 8 Corners, build 120 luxury apartments at a monthly rate of $2,450 to $2,950 a month, across from 8 Corners Primary School in an area already challenged by traffic issues. We need more thoughtful growth. Scarborough citizens are saying enough is enough. Town surveys continue to highlight growth as our #1 concern. It is time we listen to our citizens. Change is inevitable, growth is inevitable, but how it's managed is up to us. Everywhere I go, all I hear about is growth. Road to Renewal happened years ago. April was very involved in that movement because citizens felt unheard. School referendum failed. Citizens felt unheard. Library referendum failed. Citizens felt unheard. Say no to the Dunston TIFF. Citizens need to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Nope.
Guys, we have to maintain order in the room, and I ask once again that you do not applaud nor make negative sounds, which sometimes happens. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Don Hamill. I live with my bride of 40 years, at least so far, on Bay Street in Pine Point. And I'm here this evening to talk about the Dunston TIFF. And I heard Tom's comments about, well, there is no Dunston TIFF. Well, let's be sure of that there isn't one, that somehow it didn't like just slip in there. People are very concerned about that. I come here as a friend. You may not believe that. And there is one disclaimer I want to make. Not everyone here is a relative of mine. Okay, I did want to say that.
Half of them are mine.
The other thing, there are a lot of them are though. The other thing I wanted to say is that if anyone thinks that our chair, April Sider, is all about process and doesn't have any political bones in her body, think again. She came here from vacation to show up this evening. So that I really appreciate you doing that.
I've worked with 4 of you very closely in the past. I've been a 2-term town councilor. That counts for the flat head of mine. You know, those are tough jobs. They haven't gotten any easier. You have my empathy. Your jobs are tougher than ever. We thought we were through the worst we had ever seen with COVID, and I'm afraid that's not true. I also additionally wanted to thank 2 people, the town engineer, Angela Blanchette, and the town planner, Autumn Spear. I think they've done a wonderful job of trying to balance their roles of being accountable to the town manager and also the town council, but they also have another role to play, and that's to verify things like traffic movement permits and what people should be paying, and you know, how safe are our roads, and you know, whether or not they're complying, you know, in order to maintain their own professional certification. So thank you, both of you, for that. We're appealing, as a group called Not So Fast Scarborough, to the town council and our town manager to stop and listen to the public. You serve, first and foremost, the residents of the town of Scarborough. The public puts you in office and expects you to serve them, not developers, not some other master, not someone's view of what we ought to be doing to be the fastest growing town in the state. We're gladly turn in those laurels. You serve first and foremost to the residents of Scarborough. That's part of the oath that you took. We've hitched our wagon, unfortunately, to a runaway train of growth. We're so concerned about supporting development, we've lost sight of our demographic, which has 2 loud voices. New voices are being heard. I mean, it used to be, it's the same old, the cranky tax crowd that just doesn't want any development. That's not true. We found out recently that that was not the case. I'll wrap up in a second here. We've outperformed virtually every town in our county in terms of development that has come with questionable benefits and serious implications. It's put pressure on our schools, threatened our health and safety, endangered our environment. Infrastructure is not keeping pace. Let's try to sustain what we've built. No new TIFs, no new CEAs. For now, let's manage what we have and then proceed only with caution and consensus. And you do not have that now. You do not have caution and you do not have consensus. Thank you.
Thank you. I would ask that people continue to respect the red light. Thank you, guys.
I'll do my best.
I know you will.
Denise Hamilton, 2 Rod Road, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my husband Warren. I emailed all of you a few days ago, but I won't go into that lengthy email. But I did want to thank Councilor Anderson, former Councilor Don Hamill, for their interviews throughout the last couple of weeks, as well as Councilor Shoup for her Councilor Corner article and replies from a couple of you regarding the email I sent. I urge you to vote no on the Dunston TIFF, and here's why. Allowing credit enhancement agreements up to 100% shifts the financial burden away from developers and onto taxpayers. That's not fair. TIF funds don't pay for schools. With up to 375 new housing units and no detail on bedrooms, we could see many new students. And at $20,000 to $21,000 per child per year, that cost falls directly on the taxpayers. Again, not fair. This location already has major traffic and safety problems, with more than 50 accidents last year within the proposed TIF district. Adding hundreds of housing units and new commercial space will make an unsafe situation worse, no matter what road improvements are made, since it's a major route for Saco, Scarborough, and South Portland. Scarborough has already grown faster than any other town in Maine over the past 5 years. Our infrastructure, roads, and schools are strained. With LD 1829 set to take effect in 2026, now is the time to pause, reassess, and not push through another large incentive. At the same time, Scarborough residents will be asked to fund a $130 million new school and another $10 million in renovation. That's too much at once. And what's next? $80 million community center in the TIF district? This is not the right move for Scarborough taxpayers. Please vote no. And I'll close with this. We're asking for a clear no vote. I've seen how it can work in other meetings where you'll table something for further down the road. We do not support tabling this. Tabling only drags the process out. requiring the public to show up again and again for each reading, public hearing, and vote. That's unnecessary and unfair to the residents who have already made themselves clear by attending this meeting themselves. A firm no vote on September 3rd allows both the council and the community to shift our time and energy toward what we should be doing, reassessing the comprehensive plan, growth ordinance, and zoning in preparation for LD 1829. That is where Scarborough's focus belongs. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Welcome.
Thank you. Richard Hayes, Martin Avenue. I have no paper. I've lived in my home with my wife for over 50 years. I'm in the Dunston area, as are some of you on that side of the desk. Many of you also go through that area every day in travels. I can't believe you're not as frustrated as I am with the traffic. Please vote no to this TIF. It is a disaster waiting to happen. And I don't want to see us say, whoops, we shouldn't have done that. Let's say no to it before we get to that point. The traffic in that area is horrendous. Mr. Hall said something about new roads, it's a chicken and an egg. You're going to build buildings and then build roads. You're going to build roads. Where's the money going to come from to build roads if you do that first? Let's just do the right thing. I agree with the previous speaker. This should not be tabled. It should be voted down soundly on its lack of merit. So thank you for your time, and I hope we can count on your no votes.
Other folks wishing to make public comment, if you want to, I know it's tight in here. Normally we kind of make a line, but no worries. I appreciate you all being here and those of you who are standing. Welcome.
Most of you know me already. I'm Barry Stevens. I live on Spurwink Road. I'd like to look at the history of TIF here in town with the TIF at the Downs. 6, 7 years ago, we were promised that would be $30 million over the period of 30 years in CEA kickbacks. It's over 100 million now, and we're only 7 years in. What's it going to be, 200-300 million by the time the 30 years are up? So your numbers, I can't trust. Secondly, shielding, and hiding money. Oh, we don't have to pay county taxes on that. Do the county expenses go down, or are we just shifting that to other towns? Is that a right thing to do? Same with the school distribution. 2 years from now, how do we know how that distribution and state funding is going to happen? You're giving us all these numbers of all these benefits that never seem to come true. We also don't understand it. If these people, every one of these people that pay taxes, can't clearly understand what a TIF CEA deal is, we shouldn't be doing it. It's wrong. And I can tell you, it's always short. The only people that always seem to make out are the developers. So I don't think a TIF deal should be done, period. If we don't fully understand how it works, and I know I question that the people at the table really understand how it works, because the numbers always end up way off and wrong, which means somebody made a big mistake and we end up having to pay for it. We should not be doing these deals and making rich developers, period. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jolene Connor, 121 Ash Swamp Road. I've been a resident since 1952. And it's really wrong for us to turn into North Boston. I've traveled through areas in the Massachusetts area where you go half a mile in order to make a U-turn in order to come back. And it's happening right now down to Dunston. We go down, we try to get into the Dairy Corner or to Wingley's. You have to go all the way to the hardware store and turn around in order to come back to get into those businesses. Those are businesses that are making money in this town, and you're making it so we can't get in there. TIFs are wrong. It's not going to do us any good. It really isn't. Last point, we the people have said to you on several different occasions, this is not the route we want to take. We the people. You are responsive to us, we the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jonathan Farley, 6 Ridgeway, over at 8 Corners. I've lived in Scarborough for over 40 years. My wife and I built in 8 Corners in '96. And I can tell you this is not the right way to manage growth. Our roads are already choked with traffic and our schools are bursting at the seams. Do you really believe it's responsible to keep approving new developments when families can't get their kids safely to school and classrooms are already overcrowded? Scarborough deserves better. Do you really believe it's safe or responsible to pile even more cars and trucks on roads that are deteriorating and can't handle the current volume of traffic that we have? And travel times are rising and accidents are on the rise? Scarborough deserves better. If you continue to put developers' profits ahead of Scarborough residents' safety, education, and quality of life, then you are failing this community, and we will hold you accountable. Vote no on the Dunston TIFF. Thank you for my time.
Thank you. I will go ahead and take our online while we have some more people approach the podium. Thank you, Liam. AMK, you are all set?
Thank you. This is AMK. Oh, I don't know if my camera's working. AMK at 72 Gorham Road. And as I like to do when I speak in front of these groups is, and I can't see any of you while I'm talking. So if I'd like to have a show of hands of everybody in the room who is either voting against the TIF and or would appreciate a moratorium on any further commercial development in the town of Scarborough by a show of hands so that we can see collectively how everybody's feeling. And I just want to go on record, as so many people have already said, that I am not in favor of the current pace of growth. I do appreciate the consideration for a moratorium on all commercial development until it is reviewed and processed and approved by the residents of this town for whom you all work. I also wanted to pose a question: what do we actually need? What do we actually need in this town? And frankly, I don't think there's a thing that anybody in this town needs any more than what we already have, which would completely negate any further development. I don't understand why, with a development as big as the Downs, why we're even considering mowing over, paving over, developing any more commercial areas in this town. We already ruined the Downs. It has such potential for such more, say, holistic development and what's happening. So it's kind of a shame. And I just like, again, to echo what everybody else has said already before. We are residents here. We care about our community. And I want to comment on the vulnerability study or meeting that went on before. I have a hard time processing how a vulnerability study can be made and discussions about vulnerability when we live in a marsh, we live on a swamp, and the more we pave over and the more trees we cut down, the more vulnerable our environment becomes and our livelihoods, because the swamp, the property, the forest cannot continue to absorb all the changes to our climate, the rise in water, sea level, water level, the potential for flooding only goes up exponentially when we develop more. And I don't understand how we could be discussing vulnerability without putting a stop to any more commercial development. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Back to the room.
Allison Bristol, Bayview Avenue. And first I would ask the council to vote no on the Dunston TIF district. And a couple of things that I wanted to point out on the document itself, which what I do in my spare time is read documents. Even though the Marshu Terrace language has been taken out, the TIF document says the town council reserves its right to enter into future credit enhancement agreements with any party that owns or develops property in the district, so long as the credit enhancement agreement is subject of a public hearing held by the town council and the council votes to approve such agreements. Such credit enhancement agreements may include a reimbursement percentage of up to 100% of the increased assessed value of the developer/owner's property for up to the full remaining term of the district at town council's discretion. And it's a 30-year TIF district. So my question is, if we're willing to give back developers 100% of increased value, where's the benefit to the residents? And if there's a spreadsheet that can show us what the sheltered benefit's going to be from the state and how much we're going to save in county taxes, we should see that. But so far, nothing like that has been produced. The other thing that I wanted to call out was Table 2, the project costs. In this document is a cut and paste from the downtown TIF program document. And it moves some of the numbers around, but it even refers to the downtown district in referencing a $30 million earmark for a community center to bring people to the area and I quote, make the developer's project more successful. So this is in the Dunston TIF language, which brings up the question, is the point of doing the TIF all about the community center? And you're asking the public to vote yes or up to $139 million for schools this year. The total number in the project costs for the Dunston Dunston project costs is 82 million. And that's just about the same number that the ad hoc community center folks came up with on what they thought a community center would cost. So are we looking at this, 139 million for the school this year and 82 million for the community center or other projects next year? You're pushing a lot of us out of our homes through taxation. So why we're giving it away to developers, it should be the cost of doing business in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Other people wishing to make public comment this evening?
Good evening. Carol Gotro, Jamico Mill Road. You heard the community speak tonight. I would suggest and ask that you vote no for the Dunston TIF. There's a lot of language that's put forth from your team relative to sheltered monies, benefits. But we have never seen, we've heard the term return on investment back in 2018 when the Downs project was put forth. As a taxpayer, I would ask you to, whenever you use the term ROI, put forth to the community what that return on investment is. We have not seen any return on investment. We are looking at huge investment in the school system. We are talking about a community center. We're talking about making life easy for developers. My tax money is not an investment in a developer. So I'm asking tonight, the council members through the 13 years that we've been here have sat like you are tonight and listen and nod and so forth, and I respect your job. But from my perspective, you all, at least 60%, tend to push forth projects with no support of the community. Tonight is the first time I have ever seen the community turn out. And following Nina's comments here, I hope you turn out more often, because as long as we are not in this room, the projects will happen. The high-rise rental properties will be there. I mean, how many were shocked when you first saw the trees coming out of 8 corners, huh? Come on, give me a break. And so I'm looking at you tonight as I'm being as respectful as I can, but I'm asking you, manager, council members, please start listening to the taxpayers. It's our money. You need to have a return on investment. You need to prove your project, and we need to vote on any further projects. And there needs to be a moratorium on building until we know how we're going to manage the infrastructure of this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. My name is Bill Gallant. I live on the old Blue Point Road and have been here since 1978. Regarding TIFs, I owned a business in a TIF district in another town. And I can tell you that that town manipulated the TIF money to go where certain people in town government and developers wanted it to go. My business was located on Route 1. We were promised at the initiation of the TIF that, quote, significant improvements would be made to Route 1. We are now 25 years out from the formation of that TIF. Not one dime was spent on that section of Route 1. So I urge you to be very, very cautious. And in general, I would say I'm not in favor of a new TIF. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Wally Fengler, 233 Holmes Road. I moved to Scarborough in 1962 when the population was 2,500. We have the same arteries today that we had then. Now we have a population of 22,000. When I first lived on Holmes Road area, it was 1 car per hour. Now I have trouble getting out of my driveway. So I just want to point out that the arteries haven't changed. You can take Route 1, the main turnpike, or Holmes Road to get across town. So just, it's not working. And the number of people keeps, I'm sorry, change my direction a little. The comprehensive plan pointed out that the residents wanted slow to moderate growth. And yet the town keeps advertising that they're the fastest growing community in the state of Maine. So you're not listening. So I would like you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Liam Summers, 267 Holmes Road, so right up the street. If you've ever driven through Route 1 in Saugus, Mass, you know what a nightmare that road is. Congested at all hours of the day and jam-packed with convenience stores and fast food restaurants and housing complexes and industrial buildings. It's a nightmare to traverse, and no one in their right mind would want to live there. Yet for some reason, Scarborough seems intent on transforming itself into Route 1 in Saugus. And it's a carbon copy. And it's going to spread from Payne Road and Route 1 outward until all of Scarborough follows suit. In 2018, Scarborough opted to approve the Downs development project with the accompanying CEAs. We were all told how beneficial this would be to the town, as it would give increased tax revenue to fund projects like schools and recreation centers. It would bring in affordable housing, and that it would create a vibrant town square to serve the residents of the town. Now, what we ended up with is over 600 units currently jam-packed in there, projected to be close to 3,000 by the time they're done, and none of them in the affordable category. A sprawling industrial complex complete with a massive Costco, plus constant traffic congestion, and yet not one speck of a vibrant town square. However, Scarborough has recently granted permits to ostensibly build this town square, but that's going to consist of a market basket, a few retail shops, and lo and behold, another 76 more apartment units. All of this will service the Downs, the developers, and their residents, but not the town as a whole. But make no mistake, the town as a whole will fund it. Layering into this industrial sprawling Downs development, the town has greenlit a new FedEx hub to be built where the old racetrack was at the bottom of Holmes Road, a new brewery that just opened, and for good measure, an Aroma Joe's set to be built at the end of Bridges Drive, abutting Payne Road. No parcel of land around the Downs is seemingly safe from being clear-cut these days. Looking out from there is a massive apartment complex that's being constructed at 8 Corners, just a stone's throw away from one of our primary schools. That is a travesty. That whole area is a travesty. You should be embarrassed that you let that happen. At every step of the way, the town has been certain to make sure the developers get the white glove treatment. CEA and TIFs are given out like candy. The promises of future tax revenue never materializes to fund any major projects. For example, who's paying for the $140 million school restoration? And property taxes continue to rise. The only people walking away with money are the developers, constantly. The Downs developers alone have already pocketed nearly $100 million from the CEA the town offered up on a silver platter. These developers will take their money and run, and those of us who are left living here will be stuck with the fallout for decades. Congested roads, higher crime, strained services, higher taxes, and an eroded way of life. And we know these developers are being well taken care of, that the town, and by extension this council, is ensuring their projects are funded and approved, but who's looking after the rest of the people who live in this town? Rather than focusing on Scarborough as a whole, we're focusing on the developer's needs. And we are left to pay for all the added services. We are left to fund all the new projects. We are left to foot the increased tax bills. And we are the ones who now have to try to navigate roads that you can't even get out of your own driveway on. This town used to have character and green spaces and a lifestyle that was family oriented, and those days are gone. And in their place is this fever dream to transform this town into a strip mall in service of satisfying every developer's wish list. And we've achieved Route 1 in Saugus already. And now the town seems intent to overachieve and make a bad situation worse. And if Scarborough is such a desirable place to live and move to, and we're the fastest growing community in Maine, as was recently reported, why do we have to give away money to developers to build here? If they can't make their project work without being subsidized by the rest of the town and the taxpayers, then maybe we don't need that development. And maybe the needs of the town should come first for once, over the wants of the developers. So no more TIFs, no more CEAs, no more taking taxpayers' money and giving it to the developers. Enough is enough. And it's time for the town to be, time for this council to be stewards for the town and not the developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Guys. All right, I let him go over and I let you clap. That's it.
It's a little hard to follow that.
I know it is, Sue, but I know you can do it.
Sue Hamill, Bay Street. I really don't need to talk about how much Scarborough has changed over the last 20 years. But I would like to talk about how the town council has responded to some of the emails that have been sent. And when we talk about the TIF. And the town council has said that, well, we keep our tax rate down with growth. And I'd say that's really taking the easy way out. We should be able to keep our tax rate increases reasonable with a sharp pencil. Maybe consider eliminating SEDCO for starters. We don't want more growth, and since promoting the town is the purpose of SEDCO, let's start there. If this is not personal, if Karen is still here, sorry, but let's slow down on all the studies and assessments we're doing. I tried to count these up. 2 community center studies, a parks and facilities master plan, open space plan, vulnerability study, transportation assessment, 2 library feasibility studies, and now a trails and sidewalks master plan. I'm sure there are others. The other response I've heard from the town regarding TIFs is that the TIFs actually save the town money. They supposedly shelter new property value from state formulas for school funding and county taxes. Scarborough avoids losing state aid when property values increase in the district and pays less in county taxes. But the problem is that these calculations are very complex. They rely on shifting state formulas, and the estimates are prepared by outside attorneys. Scarborough does not have the capacity to independently verify the figures in the TIF application. All our tax savings calculations, including the calculations that were done for the downtown TIF, where we expect to pay Crossroads Holdings $80 million over 30 years, they've been done by our outside counsel, Bernstein Schur. We have never independently verified or confirmed the validity of our savings. We could very well be losing money from TIFs, but we really just don't know. Like the emperor's new clothes, TIFs can look very impressive on paper, but the taxpayers deserve proof, not promises. Reading through the TIF document itself is fascinating. While the town claims the TIF district is not tied to any specific new development proposal and will not by itself promote growth, our careful read paints a different picture. In quotes, I quote from the document, "A portion of the TIF revenues will contribute to the development project to increase the town's ability to stand out in a competitive marketplace as a dynamic municipality in which to reside and grow a business." Maybe back in 2012, when this document was put together. 2014 is when the final report was written. Maybe the TIF plan was originally, and that was the 2008 financial meltdown at the end of that. Maybe we wanted to stand out as a community then, but today I can tell you many of us would like to just take Scarborough off the developer map. Let's balance our growth with livability, put quality of life ahead of economic development. No Dunston TIFF. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue.
Shannon Hay, Broadturn Road. I really just want to second, third, fourth, and fifth what everybody else is saying, and I don't want to repeat any of that. I live close to the intersection at Broadturn Road. When we moved in, we had a nice, quiet little plot of land, which has slowly been taken over by traffic now from a huge apartment complex behind our home, a new bank, which has now made a cut through on what was supposed to be just a shared public right-of-way with me and the other landowner, has now become a bustling little metropolis on that road. And I don't exactly know what's going on, but we now have the land directly in front of our house, which has been cleared, with a driveway directly in front of my house. I'm gonna love it when the headlights are shining right in my front windows, with no real information that's been given to us regarding that project. I just feel like there hasn't been as much transparency. The Eight Corners project is a perfect example of that. I didn't even know about the ice thing. Thank you for the caller that informed us about that. I just would ask the council to have more consideration for the people that live here. I have been here since 1970, and I'm sad to see that my neighbors are strangers to me now. They're just not, we used to know everybody in town and now we don't. And the lack of thoughtfulness around infrastructure, an example of the house that just burnt in Pine Point and not having enough water through the existing fire hydrants that are there, having to bring in tank trucks to fight that fire. Talking about $1 million homes, and these people can't even get a fire put out. The Scott Hill Road is another perfect example of just the lack of thoughtfulness and consideration around the things that are going to make the people that live here comfortable and paying taxes. Thank you. I say vote no, please.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Pierre Hayes. I live at 5 Indian Hill Lane. And I'd just like to talk to a couple things. And it really was kind of builds on what Susan Hamill talked about. And in some of the emails that have gone to the town council, one of the town council members responded that TIFs and CEAs are great because it's bringing revenue back into the town that's used to relieve our tax increases. And what I think people don't understand, I think it's really important to operate with complete integrity and transparency. All the money that we are getting from the TIF districts is not going into the general operating fund. It is now set aside to a special fund that can only be used for projects in the TIF district. And it doesn't necessarily have to go to the voters for approval if it's a large capital project. So those monies are not being used. They're not going to the operating fund. So in the meantime, taxpayers are making up the difference of the CEA, our share of the TIF and the TIF revenue. And that, I think it was just, and that counselor accused people of spreading misinformation. And I would suggesting that those tax revenues are lowering our tax rates directly is also misinformation. We need to have honesty. I was on the town council when the first Scarborough Downs TIF and CEA was approved. There was an accountability that there was supposed to be a report that was produced that compared the cost to serve for the town to deliver all those services in that community versus the revenue we got. That has not happened as far as I know. And you've heard that from other comments tonight. We need transparency. We need to understand what is the cost to serve. Are we covering the operational costs of the town in these districts with CEAs? Certainly, if we give 100% back, I'd be really curious how we can argue that that's really going to produce net revenue for the town. So it needs to be an honest and clear conversation with the community so we all understand what's going on. And I submit that that's not happening. I would recommend that we stop TIFs and CEAs until we can do the analytical piece to understand, is a town coming out ahead as everybody claims on the council, or are taxpayers actually holding the liability? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Hello, Alan Cornwall, 21 Hidden Creek Drive. I'm pretty much been a lifelong Mainer. I was born in Maine. Other than a few years I've been here. I've been in Scarborough just a few years compared to some of you. I've been about 25 years. I've coached maybe many of your children or neighbors or grandchildren in sports, and I've enjoyed this town immensely. That said, I'm not afraid of getting involved in controversy. You may have seen me get involved when we were trying to keep boys out of girls' sports, and I was involved at the national level on that. So here we go. Let's see what we can do here. Growth is inevitable. So every town's going to have growth. It just can't be unvetted. Scarborough, as we know, is one of the fastest growing towns in Maine, is Sanford and Westbrook and a few other towns. Blanket TIFs aren't the answer. If we have these blanket areas where we're just giving tax incentives, it's a blanket reason to grow and give money back. I believe TIFs can be a great tool, which you're not probably going to hear from many people today. TIFs should be used to bring an incredible employer to the town. That's when a TIF is used. It's a business motivator. It's a leverage when you're trying to get that right employer to come to Scarborough instead of going to, Saco or South Portland. I've negotiated deals for about 30 years. And whenever you're negotiating a deal, you want to have leverage. Leverage is part of the negotiation. TIF can be part of that leverage. It's not about building houses where you get back to the laws of supply and demand, basic economic theory. Scarborough is highly in demand. When you have a high demand product, you don't put it on sale. We're putting our product on sale. So let's go back to the Downs. We were told that when the Downs was going to be built, and I was not an advocate because I said you have the wrong developers if they need a TIF to do this. They may be Scarborough or Southern Maine wealthy, but they're not wealthy enough to do this on their own nickel. And that's what we were told, a number of things. There aren't going to be children in this district. It's not the people the residents were attracting. It's not going to impact the schools. I have a good friend who has a condo in the Downs, and I asked her one day, I said, there's no children in the Downs, right? She said, no, there's all kinds of children in the Downs. I said, no, there's no children in the Downs, right? Once again, she said, no, there's all kinds of children. I told her about when they were building the project and pitching it. We incented the developer to build faster. We gave them more incentive if they built properties faster. That was a negative impact to the town. It's crazy. Another thing is the builder hasn't been acting in good faith. And there's one simple example of this. When we were looking for a place to build the school, and we had all kinds of threats, they always threaten sports. We're going to put it where the football field is and the track is. And then there was a potential to put it over in the Downs. And the developer of the Downs came back and wanted more than $1 million more than the assessed value. They wanted more than the assessed value from the town to buy it from people that were giving them incentives. That is not a good faith partner. As a matter of fact, I thought the town should have gone after them and taken the incentives back. So developers rarely, if ever, do their projects aligned with initial proposals. And the best example of that is Thompson Point in Portland. That was going to have an arena and hotels, and it was a convention center. And we look over there and there's, the old brick buildings, and they've done a nice job. They built a hockey rink, and now they're starting to build some, I think, low-income housing. It's not what was proposed. It's not what the city had approved, and that's what happens. So I believe any TIF, and I believe a TIF should be very specific and used as leverage, not for general blanket areas. That's just a bad idea. It needs to have accomplishments and adherence to any plan assigned to that TIF. And anything that's out of alignment with that TIF or adherence, you have to have the ability to claw back that TIF. So that's my 3 minutes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan.
Hi, Jack Fay, 14 Mulberry Lane. In reference to what he just said, I just wish we had done that years ago. That would have made sense. Right now, I can't say anything more than the rest of the people said. TIF is no-brainer as far as most people are concerned. If you open up a TIF and say, I'm going to save it for later, you're just opening up the door for people to put their toes in and become CEAs later on and making it very easy. To me, that's sneaky. And I don't think a TIF should be done. I won't go on too much about a TIF because I think I want the town to do something else. I want you to put a moratorium on growth. I want you to put a moratorium on building. Wait until we catch up to what we've already built, because we're not catching up. We're falling far, far behind. And believe me, if you look at me, I'm usually last in the pack running. Okay? Now, if I told you I had a toll booth that I could lease to you on the Maine Turnpike Authority, and you just have to pay me a certain amount of money, but you'll get all the tolls, everybody in the room would say, that's a scam. Guess what? We all think a TIF right now is a scam. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. No applause, please. Thank you, Jack. Other folks wishing to make public comment this evening? Certainly.
My name is Carrie Brady, and I live on Crossing Drive, so I'm right in the middle of the mess. I'm afraid I'm going to get killed every time I have to turn into where we live. I know a lot of money was spent to fix the problem up in Dunston not too long ago. It certainly hasn't fixed it. It's a mess. And, all this, I think the Scarborough police have been ticketing people a lot lately there. People are going to get killed. Okay, I'm up there pumping the gas on my car. Don't hit me, okay? There's so much traffic up there and they're going so fast. Another problem is, I know we're all going to say, well, it's seasonal. We got a lot of traffic right now. So I sit in that traffic the other day with my husband. I said, of these 18 cars, all 18 except one were main plates. So it's just crazy, the traffic there. I don't know what the outcome of that so-called, what you did years ago was, but it's not working. The traffic's worse than ever. And you can't turn right on red, come up Payne Road. Okay, you're sitting there, line of traffic down Payne Road. I don't know, maybe somebody could explain that sometime. Why can't you turn right on red there? What was what is it supposed to prove? What did they think was what traffic was gonna be better because you couldn't turn right on red? So I guess that, no matter what, I think, I'm gonna say what the kids say. And I grew up in Scarborough. I graduated from Scarborough High School, okay? Moved away, moved back. I went to college in Rhode Island, moved back. And, I'm not gonna go there. Change is okay, but it's out of control, the building. And I'm gonna say what the kids say, you need to slow the roll. Thanks.
Thank you. Other people wishing to make public comment this evening?
Bob Mitchell, Willowdale Road. I wasn't originally going to speak, but I just got to, I've been around for a while, as people know. And first of all, I'd like to welcome all the newbies in the town. And even my old neighbor, I didn't realize Wally had only been here since '62, which is fairly new. Don, I know he's a newbie. I've been around, actually, my family's been around since the 1800s, and I'm not talking just parents, grandparents, but most of my great-grandparents, and I was on the school board for 9 years. I'm into facts, I'm into numbers, as Mr. Hall knows. I'm an actuary by background, so I can grasp numbers pretty easily. And I will clarify facts. When I ran in 2000 for the school board and I got on, I said, I was from Scarborough, Maine, and my mother quickly told me, you were born in the Ospathic Hospital in Portland. You didn't come to Scarborough until day 3, whereas she was born in the first house going up the old Scottus Hill Road, which is now Higas Parkway, just behind Higas Parkway, because her grandparents' place had burnt in the 20s. So I'm technically a newbie from out of town for 2 days anyways. But as far as numbers, I've never been a big fan of it. I think a lot of people have spoken some interesting things, and I agree with. TIFs, to my knowledge, have always been designed for business, to get business in competitive from one place to another, not for housing developments. So I've never been a big fan of Scarborough the last year, extending their TIFs to, all kinds of things. Also, I like numbers, and maybe it exists, I just haven't seen it. I'd like to see a 2, 5, and 10-year growth of Scarborough by types of housing, apartments, duplexes, condos, single family, compared to our 7 competitors. When I mean 7, when I was on board, I always like to look at the 7 geographical areas. We border 7 municipalities. If you want to toss in Yarmouth, Falmouth, and Wyndham, which are socially, economically like Scarborough, let's see what is our growth rate relative to the various types of housing compared to those 7 or 10 areas. What do we have for existing? How many apartments do we have relative to total housing compared to all those? And let the people see that. That tells you how fast we grow and what type of distribution we have for people. I'm all for growth, but I'm for measured growth. And I know in the last 20 years, and we had a big growth in the 90s, which, and then we've really elevated it. But let's see, why do we need all these apartment growth relative to the individual houses that we used to grow back in the 60s and 70s? But let's get the numbers out there so people can see it. And I've never seen that. Now, maybe the town manager has those comparisons of our 7 competitors, or 10 if you want to add in a few other towns. But I think the public needs to know, what are we doing relative to the rest of not the world, our universe here, which is we don't need to compare ourselves to Kittery. People aren't, yes, somebody might live in Kittery and work in Scarborough, but the majority are within a 30-mile radius. So I'd like to see that, and I know my light's flashing, so I will sign off quickly, but to see the numbers and then get back to the concept of what was the original TIF designed for. It was literally competition for getting big business into one area versus another, not for developing houses. So I'm not a big fan of TIFs outside of the business world, not into development, and I'm certainly not in favor of the Marshview restaurant being developed. Well, I said Marshview restaurant, that dates me right there. I actually put the landscape in back in 1975, so I was a little kid then, but anyways, I'd just like to see some numbers before the council goes too far with these things. Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
and welcome all newbies.
Other members of the public wishing to speak this evening? Anyone else online? No one else? Okay. At this time, I will close the public hearing. Thank you all for being in attendance this evening. We will take a 8-minute recess and reconvene at 8:40. Hi, everybody, and welcome back. With that, we will move on through our agenda this evening. Order number 25-072 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the order authorizing the issuance of up to 129,850,000 in bonds of the town to fund the cost of building a new 8 Corners primary school and renovate, expand Pleasant Hill School, Blue Point School, Wentworth School, and the middle school to remove all portable classrooms and place the following question on the November 4th, 2025 municipal ballot. Shall the order entitled, Order authorizing issuance of up to 129,850,000 in general obligation bonds of the town of Scarborough to fund costs for a new 8 Corners primary school and renovate, expand Pleasant Hill, Blue Point, Wentworth, and the middle school to remove all portable classrooms be approved. This, of course, is coming to us from the School Building Advisory Committee. This has also been put through the council at first reading. And so at this time, I will ask if there are any members of the public that would like to make comment on this item. I see a hand raised. You should
Hello,
be.
Matthew Keith. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, Matthew.
8 Pleasant Ave. I am a member of the School Building Communications Committee, but I do not speak in that capacity on behalf of them tonight. I want to thank the council for your support of getting this project on the ballot, and I just want to encourage the council and anybody listening or anybody still in the room to go check out the school building project website. If you look up the Scarborough schools, you go to the web page and then you click at the top right at a little button that says building project. We have put a lot of work into getting it updated. There's a all new frequently asked questions. There's some really well done informational flyers. So I definitely encourage everybody to go check out the information on there. And if you know anybody who wants to help volunteer with strictly educating and informing, send them to volunteer with us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Anyone else wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Council discussion. Yes, Councilor Donovan.
Would like to make an amendment to the proposed language
Yes, sir.
to add at the conclusion of the words, the town council and the board of education.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. Can you start from the beginning? Your microphone is not on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to make an amendment, and I will take the opportunity to explain how this came about and why I was asked to do this evening momentarily, but we'll procedurally get the motion on the table.
Yes, please.
At the conclusion of the vote, to add the words, the town council and the Board of Education recommend approval of this question.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion of Bill's amendment. And Bill, I'm going to go ahead and let you kind of give your explanation, please.
We're presenting this amendment on the advice of the town attorney. The referendum questions require that by statute that the town council and the Board of Education's recommendations to approve the referendum appear in the language that appears on the ballot. So this is a procedural change directed by town council's review, and we're making this editing change to comply with the law.
Perfect. Thank you. Other council discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? I'll show that as unanimous. Returning to the main motion as amended, is there council discussion or comment? I will go ahead and, so I'm speaking on behalf of Councilor John Anderson this evening, who is having a beverage by the pool somewhere in my honor. He gave me this piece of paper. He actually emailed it to several of us, and then I now have it here. And he said, I'm going to paraphrase something along the lines of, please read this word for word in my voice, or you may paraphrase and do the bare minimum. And so I responded and said, thank you for this opinion piece. I will do the bare minimum. Everyone knows that John and I get along great, and we have a very playful relationship. I will do him the honor of reading part of this, but you also know about John Anderson that he can be quite wordy, and I'm not reading all 700 words here. So I'll start with my favorite one, which is, I want to thank the SBAC members, school, town staff, Counselor Seither, Counselor Donovan, and Harriman for all of their hard work that got us to this point. You're here. I appreciate the diversity of the committee and how they worked tirelessly to come to the best possible solution based on the facts provided to them in the differing perspectives brought by our community. He has a little bit more here. In big bold letters, it says, all big things in human history have been arrived at slowly through many compromises. And I think that he hits the nail on the head with that sentiment. Speaking for myself now, we brought together 40 some odd people to serve on a committee and asked them to commit every single Monday night of their time to developing a solution, to understanding the needs of our students, to responding to the feedback that we were receiving from school administration and staff, to put forward a recommendation that will meet the needs of our entire community while being sensitive to those that pay the taxes, while also appreciating that this is work that is long overdue. And so with that, John would like us all to know that he is endorsing a yes vote in November. I will also be endorsing a yes vote, first of all, to send this to referendum, but also I hope that the community will join me in voting yes in November as well. Other council comment? Yes, Larry.
I suspect that in my tenure on the town council, Councilor Anderson will continuously usurp my opinions before I can get to them.
He's an expert in the field.
And not realizing that would be an opportunity for tonight. I certainly haven't worked on that committee and been a part of it, and appreciate the incredible people and work that got done there. I have full support and have every intention of supporting the referendum question for approval. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Thank you. Other council comment? Councilor Fellows.
Yes, I'll also just very briefly go on record as not only supporting this for purposes of sending to the voters, but fully intending to vote for it, and plan to do my part to talk to my friends and neighbors accordingly. So I apologize in advance.
Any other council comment? Yes, Bill.
And obviously I voted for it in committee with April. The two of us served as the liaisons. In a word, public education is the cornerstone of our country. It's what makes us effective as a community, teaches people. And so this is a terrific moment that Scarborough's now going to try and advance its public school system to be first class, right there with any other top public school system in the state. This is a very important moment for our town.
Thank you, Bill. Anything else? With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that is unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-073 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the order authorizing issuance of up to $10 million in additional bonds of the town to fund the cost of the expansion of the middle school, to accommodate expected additional enrollment, and place the following question on the November 4th, 2025 municipal ballot. Shall the order entitled, "In the event that the referendum question number 1 receives a favorable vote, order authorizing the issuance of up to $10 million in general obligation bonds of the town of Scarborough to fund costs for the expansion to the middle school to accommodate expected additional enrollment," be approved. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item?
Why isn't that, it's already in the 129 billion that's part of the renovations?
I'm happy to address questions during council deliberation. Right now, we're going to take public comment. That's okay. No worries.
That's okay. No problem. Nina McKeith, 309 Black Point Road. This has to do with education, so I hope I'm not out of order. I just wanted to acknowledge Larry Kane for the work that you did so incredibly. I've been to a few of the meetings, not all of them, but you were amazing. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Anyone else wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Second.
Council discussion. And so it's because of the acoustics in this room, anyone who's viewing online or on watching us on TV, hi Dad, you aren't able to hear the public anymore. We used to be able to hear if someone called out from the public, but someone in the room had the question of why this is being presented as a separate question and why it's not included in the original question, which will appear on the ballot as question number 1. And I can answer that just to say that the recommendation that came out of the School Building Advisory Committee was to separate what we are calling the primary need and the impending project, which is based on current enrollment, from this additional $10 million, which contemplates future enrollment. And so the additional $10 million is something that is not going to be needed necessarily right out of the gate. And as a result, the committee discussed whether or not it was something that they wanted to recommend or that something that was needed. And it was put forward that it is certainly something that is needed, but that it was the will of the committee to recommend that we separate it and ask it as an additional question. And so if this is approved this evening by the council, what you will see on the November ballot is a primary question, which pending approval would also allow us to ask a second question, which pending approval would grant us an additional $10 million to do some renovations to the middle school that are not otherwise contemplated in question 1. Other council discussion or comments on this item? Bill?
Again, by virtue of town council's advice to us to add technical language.
Yes, sir.
That will allow us to comply with the statutory obligations that are presented here. I make a motion to amend, to add the words, "The town council and the Board of Education recommend approval of this question."
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. Council discussion on the amendment.
My comments earlier are, and I won't repeat them. This is the same
Statutory
technical
requirement.
point.
Okay. Other council discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? I show that as unanimous. Returning to the main motion as amended, is there additional council comment on this question? Larry? Oh, sorry, you were just fixing your glasses. Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote for this because it's going to the people. I mean, you have to have, it's a pretty simple vote. It's just put it in their hands and let them make the choice. So I think we have to vote for this and let them make the choice.
Well said. Thank you, Scott. Other council comment? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? I'll show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-077 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request for a mobile food vendor license from Cameron Gardner doing business as Falafel Mafia. This is coming to us from the clerk's office.
Yes, this is a new application and he's required to have a public hearing before the council, and the clerk's office recommends approval.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Council discussion? Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, is the person here? No?
I don't believe so.
I was gonna say, if they were, this agenda probably should have been moved up.
Your point is well taken. And typically, you're absolutely right. I would have been more on top of that.
Good point.
Very, very good point. We'll get to you in a minute, Chief Holmquist. Counselor Anderson's not here to say, what, no samples? So I'll say it for him. With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? I show that as unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to old business. Order number 25-078 is act on the names to the various committees and boards that were posted at the July 16th, 2025 Town Council meeting as recommended by the Appointments and Negotiations Committee. These were read into the public record by Counselor Donovan at our previous meeting. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Any council discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? I'll show that as unanimous. Thank you to our volunteers and thank you for the Appointments and Negotiations Committee. Moving on to new business. Order number 25-079 is act on the request from the Chief of Police to accept a donation in the amount of $1,000 from Deborah Kolzek to go towards the Police Department's K-9 program. Welcome, Chief Holmquist.
Good evening. Thank you. This is another generous donation to our department, and I am in front of you tonight to ask for your approval of this generous donation. Again, it'll go directly to our K-9 program, who has been very lucky lately to have citizens come forward with proceeds going directly to our K-9 program. So I appreciate your approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any council discussion?
Since the chief had to wait all this time, I think we ought to at least recognize we get a report from the police department and it opens our eyes as to, and the chief does the report with his staff, and it tells us just how active and effective our police department is. And it's a credit to our community, and it should be said.
Thank you, Counselor Donovan. I also would like to congratulate you all on your positive press recently. It's been really nice to see us in the news and to see stories of donations coming in. I think that really inspires us and brings us together. So congratulations and thank you for waiting.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any other council comment? Yeah, go ahead, Gord.
I think the chief should bring the dog every time.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, now he's chit-chatting with a resident. I'm getting too
I had the
fresh.
same
now.
comment that the last time they did this, they actually brought in one of the K-9 dogs. So
All right, so now I'm being told that, a conditional of approval, it might help if we had our dog friends here.
Would that
Moving
help to-
forward.
Would it help you knew that it was overtime for the officer to bring the dog? Yeah.
Our finance chair is not here, it's fine. Any other council comment? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? I show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-080 is act on the request to authorize the town manager to sign the EcoMaine Bands Tephra, I did it wrong. I practiced this. Bands Tephra on behalf of the town of Scarborough.
Just very quickly by way of introduction, council back in October 24 approved a very similar resolution that was for initial bond anticipation notes. This action is a resolution required for their compliance with IRS regulations so as to qualify them for tax exempt status. And is simply to replace the bond anticipation financing with long-term revenue bonds.
Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this?
Just a final note, there's no debt obligation that accrues to the town of Scarborough. This is simply as required. Contingent debt, I'm told.
Seeing no public comment, do I have a motion?
Second.
Any council discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 10 is non-action items. I do not have any non-action items this evening. Item 11 is council member comments. Is there anyone wishing to say anything else? I have a couple too. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes, just sort of continuing with the theme of public safety appreciation, just wanted to acknowledge and thank public safety staff for their responses to a couple of recent events down at Pine Point, both on very hot, busy beach days. One was when the main water main burst on Pine Point Road and had to come out and redirect traffic. And fortunately, they were able to take care of that. And then obviously the house fire last week, in which they were able to get down there quickly and douse the fire and get that put out without it spreading again on a very hot, windy day. So just wanted to note that and appreciate that.
Certainly. Thank you. Any other council comments? Yeah, Larry, and then Scott.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the turnout tonight. I think our town is so much healthier when the community is involved more. And so it was rewarding to see the people come in. I learned a couple of things that I didn't know. And so I just wanted to say, I think that's a great thing. I hope that it can continue, not just for that TIF CEA process, but for other important matters in front of the town as well.
Well said. Thank you, Larry.
Yeah, I'd just like to, I guess for my comments, take up a situation that I've been dealing with. How do I want to phrase this? Well, it's Karen Lothrop down at Pine Point. She's been parking cars in a yard for years now and been doing it. And I guess code enforcement says she can't do it anymore. And I wanted to thank her for years of service. And I tell her to just keep doing it and push it. You know, you always have to question authority. And that's the way I feel about things. You really need to just do what you think is right. And I think the congestion down there in the Salty Bay restaurant, you know, she parks cars because they have a very small parking lot and it helps them out. She helps the community out. She's a service to the community. And I don't know why we would try to squash that. But thank you.
Thank you. My council comments this evening. I want to say thank you to the counselors who manned the table at Summerfest. I was unable to be there. I was getting my vacation glow, but I heard wonderful things from all of the counselors who were able to attend and be at the table. It is such a wonderful community event, and so I want to congratulate the organizers and everyone, all of our senior staff that helps to promote that, everyone from our community services department to the Chamber of Commerce. I heard amazing things about the young entrepreneurs tables. And so I hope that that is something that was well received. And I would love to see that move forward. And it's just such a wonderful community event. And I hope that the residents all enjoyed themselves. And I, again, just want to express my appreciation to the council for making yourselves available to be there. And then I have one last thing, which is a reminder that school starts next Wednesday. And my children right now are all groaning, but I would not be doing my due diligence if I didn't remind our community to please be aware that there will be kids out. We have a lot of young new drivers driving themselves to school for the first time, myself included. And so just to be aware of the change in the traffic patterns, and to really take it slow in our neighborhoods and make sure that our kids get to school to and from safely. And so with that, I will go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you.